All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Thanks so much for hanging out here on a Saturday night. Sorry for the little switch up and also the slightly later start here. I was out having an enjoyable day here myself and just got back a little late. But hope you're all having a great weekend here. And yeah, thanks so much for the flexibility here. And so like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours. Maybe we'll still cut it off around 11, so maybe an hour 45. But I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member here with the green usernames. They always get that priority answering. If you'd also like that, there's always a link in the description. I see we have Lanswath, Harsha, B. Mitchell, Vishal, Luke, and OK Bassist. And let me mute this. And also Will from San Diego, Raphael, Jazz, and Kraken, Kevin, Doug. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. And so we'll get right into it here. So Lance Watt says, good evening, everyone. My spot this week was a Scion FRS and a Focus ST. Nice. Yeah, it's always fun to see both those vehicles, especially the FRS and the BRZ always, of course, give me a nice smile. But I saw a variety of interesting stuff. Saw Polaris Slingshot. I don't see those too often. That was an interesting spot. Such a bizarre car. Yeah, there's a bunch of other random stuff. Nothing like insanely rare for me this week, but I'm curious to see what else you guys saw. But Harsha says, my spot of the week was a Nissan 350Z convertible. Very nice. And V. Mitchell said, spot of the week was an electric blue Focus RS out in the middle of nowhere in North Dakota. That's awesome. And happy to see people still out rocking those Focus RSs because they're starting to get a little bit on the older side. That I wonder how many people are, aging out of them just from a mileage standpoint and maybe getting into something new. But I'm always happy to see a Focus RS. But I do feel like they're a little more rare than they used to be, unfortunately. My funny spot of the week is I continue to see the brand new X3 everywhere. I see like at least one or two a day every single day now. I don't know if it's just that, weird mental phenomenon where when you start looking for something, then you see it everywhere or what. But like for a brand new model launch, I don't know if everyone that wanted one like hurried up and bought it before, tariffs and all that stuff, or why I'm seeing an explosion of new X3s everywhere. But that's been my hilarious thing. Every time I see one, every few hours now, it seems I'm just like shaking my head like there's another one. The look actually surprisingly has grown on me after seeing them so much recently. But let me see. And B. Mitchell also said, for those of you still with moms around, don't forget to wish her well tomorrow. Heading back home from North Dakota on Thursday, I stopped and visited mine at the Township Cemetery in my hometown. Well, it's very nice you're able to stop. And sorry, yours isn't with you anymore, B. Mitchell. But it's definitely a great thing to appreciate moms and appreciate them for all they do, and keep them alive in our memories if they're not with us here anymore. But that's the main reason why doing the live stream here on Saturday, so we can just have Sunday just for the moms here, so everyone can just focus on that, and myself included. Let me see here. Lancelot, thanks so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate the generosity. Happy to see some familiar names there and some new ones able to get those memberships. Hopefully some people that might be in the live here tonight that can join in and hang out with us here. And Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat of the night here. He says, Thursday was birthday number 55. Well, happy belated birthday. He says, Friday I drove next to a white Countach with rear and front wing on the freeway. Sounded amazing. I bet. Wow. Yeah, that is a very rare spot. Maybe not where you are. I don't remember exactly where you said you were, but around here, I don't think I've actually ever seen a Countach on the road. If I have, it's definitely been over a decade. That is really cool. Very nice spot. And Countaches are big money these days too. So driving something like that around, especially with the wings, I feel like that might be one of the more valuable ones too. You definitely, I think, win spot of the week there. That's impressive. Thanks for sharing, and thank you again for the super chat. Let me see. Lance Watt's also going to be honoring his mom tomorrow. And Vishal says, haven't gotten around to watching the weekly update this week, so I wasn't expecting the Saturday stream. Then I remembered what tomorrow is. Yep. And Luke said, saw a V8 Dodge Dakota for sale yesterday. Looked pretty rusty. I'll be in and out of the stream as I'm in the middle of an episode of The Rookie. Nice. Yeah, all good. And the nice thing about the live stream series, you can always catch them later, especially if you're not interested in, asking questions or anything. That's the great thing is it's on demand. And so I assume a lot of people that maybe aren't here tonight, we only have 38 people in here right now, so a little lower than usual. I'm assuming a lot of people can just watch this after the fact. So we'll see. If we, if the comments kind of dry up here, we can always sign off early too. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. But and B Mitchell said, I'll be in and out of the stream too, since YouTube streaming here is as reliable as a Yugo with 85,000 miles on its original timing belt. Yeah, I'm kind of curious, B Mitchell, what you think about Yugo trying to make a return there in Europe. I'm sure they have a better reputation there maybe than they do here, or just a generally lower standard for reliability that Europeans are often used to. Lots of surprised they even last 85,000. I've never driven one, never ridden in one or anything like that. But, again, from everything I've heard, they are not great vehicles. Okay, Basis says, happy Saturday, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. And I dated a gal from Denver who claims she got over 100,000 miles on hers. Then again, she proved to be just as flaky as the car. Well, that's unfortunate, but kudos to you for actually dating a Yugo owner. That's got to be some kind of achievement on its own, because that's just that combo of female Yugo owner. I feel like there's very, very few people even own them. So the fact you found a Yugo owner is really impressive. That's funny. I guess her and the car were on the same wavelength, and it probably worked just great for both of them. Let me see. Appreciate the lots of the emoji there. I will get around to doing new emojis on the Fiat and the Bullet people requested last week. I promise that is something I can do. Just this week's been crazy. I won't get into it, but very, very overworked this week. So hopefully I will have a few spare minutes here next week to bang those out real quick for the next live. Trent Car Guy says, greetings from Arizona. Hope you're doing well. And let me see here. Kraken says, hey Matt, chilling with my N Club PA peeps out at Sheets. Awesome. Well, thanks for stopping by, but go have fun with them. Don't bother hanging out here, but enjoy, have a nice fun drive for me. Keep it safe and all that. But that was what I used to do many times on a Saturday night, hang out at the Sheets with car friends and go have a little bit of fun. I miss those days. Maybe someday I'll get back to at least night drives. That'd be fun. Let me see. I see Doug says hi. Yeah. Armino says, Matt the OG. I appreciate that. Thanks for stopping by. And Jordan Garguy says, I drove a Model 3 briefly and I don't see the appeal. It was boring to me. I'm curious, what experience you have with EVs, because a lot of people just driving an EV in general is boring, but I'm not sure if there's anything specific to the Model 3 that really struck you there. I don't love the Model 3 either. I mean, it's a good car, in all the appliance kind of ways. Like it drives well, in my opinion. It's smooth, it's quiet, it's comfortable. It's assigned job well. And for millions of people, that's plenty. And, they're happy owners. And, nothing that stands out, especially these days with how, many of them are out there. And Kavandra, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, do you think the 26 Kia K5 will get all-wheel drive or no? I mean, I think they would have done it for 25 with the refresh we got with the new lights and, all that, the new interior. That would have been the time to add it. I think it's very unlikely. Usually car companies don't mess around with powertrain stuff on a non-update year. And I'm assuming 26 will just be all carryover since 25 was, the refresh. So if you're waiting for 2026 is hoping for that, I don't think that's worth, because I really doubt it. I really strongly doubt it. Again, I think you're either, better off going to the Sonata for the all-wheel drive or, one of the other all-wheel drive competitors there. I love K5, but if all-wheel drive is a must-have for you, It's strange, again, I thought for sure it would come for 25, but it hasn't. So I'm assuming they don't have plans for that until maybe the next generation at this point. So yeah, I wouldn't wait for it. I mean, I hate to tell you definitively and then have myself be wrong, but um, maybe look around and see if there's any other, info out there, do a quick little Google and see if there's anyone talking about it or anything. Korean Car Blog is a really good website that really stays on top of the Korean car news stuff. So maybe check out their site, see if there's anything there. But I really don't think it's probably going to come. It's a decent chance for the next generation, I guess, but I don't think it's going to happen here for some reason. Thank you so much for the super chat. Let me see. So Jazz says, Matt looks good. He shaved since the weekly update. Matt, are you enjoying the new Fiat E-car? Is that the car you have? Yeah, the 500E. And yeah, I did just shave today. So I got a 5 o'clock shadow, but otherwise it's about as clean shaven as I'll ever be on camera. And 500E is great. It hasn't really moved in the past probably a month and a half at this point. Yeah, probably about a month and a half. I've shuffled it around the driveway a little bit because I had to kick it out of the garage in order to garage some of the other vehicles that either needed charging because they're EVs or the one special one that members already know about that'll be posting a video on here later this month. But so Fiat was kind of just hanging out outside for much of this past month, but now it's back in the garage. And yeah, it's doing its job of being a nice little backup car that's there if I need it. I put about almost 600 miles on it, in the first month or so of having it when I didn't have press cars. Now I've been overloaded with press cars. It seems like they may start to slow down, maybe taper off here as we get into the summer. We'll see. Yeah, that's what that car is designed for. And that's why it's a 5,000 mile a year lease and all that, because it's just mostly going to sit. But I still love it. It still makes me smile just seeing it in the garage there. It's happy little face. And yeah, it's still a car. I'm very happy I have it. And let me see. Cooper says, does Chevy have a new work truck EV that they haven't announced? I passed my local dealer and saw it looked like a new electric van, Chevy electric van. There's the Bright Drop thing, and there was actually one of those at the New York Auto Show. So maybe they're pushing those a little more, but yeah, there is that new van. It's called the Bright Drop. It's been out for a few years now. It just hasn't been picked up very much. I think they had contracts with FedEx and one or two others, but that is probably what you've seen if you Google. I'm pretty sure it's called the Bright Drop by GM. That is probably what I'm guessing you saw. Now, as far as work, you're saying that electric van. As far as work truck, there is the work truck version, the stripped down version of the Silverado EV. So that's also been around. That was actually, I think, the first version of that to come out. So there's both of those. If it's not one of those two, then yeah, you might have seen some other thing. I'm not sure. The only other thing I can think of is, there's talks of these Hyundai GM partnerships with them potentially rebadging some of the Hyundai stuff to get into the commercial field that way here in the States. But I doubt it's anything like that showing up just yet. So probably one of those two. Let me know if the Bright Drop is what you saw there. Let me see. B. Mitchell said, actually, I almost bought a Focus RS instead of the 19 Mustang GT. Thought was that I'd use it for all 4 seasons, and they're still on my radar. Nice. Yeah, they're really great cars. My only complaint was that I didn't love the driving position personally, just for my body type. The seat was just angled too aggressively that it was like right on the underside of my knee. Whenever I'd put it in the clutch, it would like kind of just not be comfortable for me. So it's a car I don't think I would ever own just for that reason. And maybe these days I could be more comfortable in it than I was 10 years ago. I don't know. I'd like to have another go in one someday and give it a try again. But they're phenomenal fun, though. I really enjoyed all the time I've spent in them. Sorry I missed the other super chats here. Mez, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, hey, Matt, been a sub for years. Love the content. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thanks for stopping by, too. And, let me know if you have any questions, since it's a little bit of a slower one tonight. I think I'm going to be able to hopefully keep up with member and non-member questions. So hopefully everyone will be able to get their questions answered here tonight. But thanks so much for subscribing all these years. I really appreciate that. that really does help. So thank you so much. And Jordan, thank you so much for a very generous super chat as well. He says, in the future, will we find that the big three had a hand in the demise of Tesla slash Elon? The Tesla company influenced the three towards EV adoption. I think it's just free market. Tesla had a really nice advantage for a long time. And I think part of that they gave up deliberately. They gave up the supercharging advantage. That was, it still is, less of an advantage now than it was, since we keep seeing the regular non-Tesla network growing so fast. But it still would have been a huge perk if that was exclusive to them. They opened it up because, surprisingly, actually under the Biden administration, like that was what needed to. That's they unlocked the superchargers there in order to get a bunch of federal grants and a bunch of government money that went straight into Tesla's pocket there. So I mean, he just took the quick payday from the government for that stuff, and I think it's better for the EV charging community to have all those supercharging stations. So it's a good thing, I think, that it happened. But Elon gave away his biggest advantage, and so maybe he again just kind of wanted the cash grab there and didn't care so much, or maybe he truly just wanted to improve EV charging for everyone. And either way, that's, I think, for better for worse, it has hurt Tesla, and I think it also lessens the appeal of Tesla ownership, because I think it was a little bit more of a tighter knit community back whenever only Tesla people were hanging out at superchargers, and now they got to deal with everybody with an EV, again, for better or for worse. And so, I think that's kind of tarnished things a little bit. But I think if there is ever a demise of Tesla and or Elon, it will be entirely their own doing. And you can't blame any other car company for coming out with competitive vehicles that make the Teslas look dated. They also don't do updates like every other car company does. They let stuff, languish on the vine there and just get so stale. I mean, Model X, Model S, these are old cars, by any standard, unless we're talking about 4Runner lifespans. Other than that, it is ancient, and that doesn't get people excited. And I've seen a lot of the original earlier adopters of the Model S. They had the Model S, and then maybe they even got the refresh one, or they went into an X or something like that, but then there was nowhere for them to go. They got tired, they got out of their lease or whatever, there was nothing new. And now I think a lot of those early Model S buyers now have gone into Lucid Airs. Maybe a lot of them actually, it seems like they've kind of graduated up into Rivians, especially if we're talking about ones that went from S to X and are comfortable with the SUV thing, and then went into the Rivians after that. And there's also a lot that, again, are starting to go GM. I think especially we're seeing, at least I've been seeing a lot of people that were Tesla people are now GM people and are still really adamantly defending the lack of CarPlay, and are like, it's fine, I didn't need it in my Tesla and I don't need it in my Equinox EV or whatever now as well. So I think there's actually, it seems to me like I'm getting the early vibe that there's a lot of Tesla converts that are now GM fanboys, and really are again mad at me for ever pointing out the lack of CarPlay. So all of these things, I think, are a perfect storm that's kind of compressing Tesla and putting pressure on them to sink or swim. And, again, Elon's not helping things, but I think that Tesla, again, for all the other reasons I mentioned, was kind of already on a not so great trajectory, in my opinion. And all the other stuff that's been promised that would be exciting, or even a Halo product like the Roadster, that's been infinitely delayed. There's always talks about a more affordable car that never comes. Cyber cab, jury's still out on whether that's going to actually be a thing. And whether this full self-driving stuff can actually, cut it and achieve this vision he's been talking about for the past decade or whatever. But I think it's just, they're trying to not conform to the auto industry, but I think that only goes so far, before you realize, like, hey, like, people want a new look. People are vain. And, they don't want to have something that looks like it's 10 years old. And I don't blame them, especially when you're spending that kind of money. And so, I think those are, all the things. So I personally wouldn't blame any competitor because they're just competing. I don't think there's anything sinister going on. Again, Elon's the richest man in the world. Like, if anything, it's the other way around. So there's no, there's no leverage there. There's not like the big three can put him out of business. This isn't another Tucker story. If you know your automotive history, like, to me, it's nothing like that. It's just, some not keeping up with competition and doing things to hurt your business. It's that simple, in my opinion. But great question, Jordan. Thanks so much for asking. And Chad, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, other than weight, why are most off-road EVs worse than their ICE competition? I guess it depends on your definition of worse. Certainly there's more limitations, like, the range and that kind of being more of a pain, because a lot of these off-roading trails and stuff are so far out of the way that by the time you get there and then you're doing this demanding, stuff, and then you go back, it can be, stressful. So there's those types of things that are certainly worse. But I think Jeep's actually talked about this themselves, that like the real beauty of EV powertrains is that you have such precise power delivery, and you can really custom tailor each wheel, each motor to what it's doing differently. And there's a lot more of a minute adjustment there versus, okay, the engine's got to rev up, and then we got to transfer that to the transmission, and then we got to put it through the transfer case, and it's just there. It's not as precise of a process, and so it seems like eventually, again, once the range gets there, or Jeep's also been planning on putting charging spaces somehow in the middle of nowhere near popular trails and stuff, so people can juice up and have the range thing not be as big of a deal. Or again, we just have the batteries evolve so that's not an issue, in 5 years or so. But for right now, those are, I think, the main things holding it back. But I think also, the weight is certainly a thing that's not ideal. And then also, I think, a lot of off-road people are also people that, they're driving around in 20, 25-year-old Jeeps. These are not people that are on the cutting edge of technology. There are some for sure, buy off the shelf, these TRD Pros and, Ranger Raptors and all that kind of stuff. So there's certainly some of that, people that have deep pockets and, like having brand new stuff. But to me, maybe I'm completely wrong because I'm not familiar with the off-roading community, but to me, I don't think the off-roading community, I don't think a majority of the people in that community are people that are dropping 50 grand plus on a vehicle that's, even made this decade. Again, I could be way off there, but that's just my read on it. So I think that, that crowd, it's going to be one of these things that kind of slowly trickles down until these things are affordable, use things that they can beat up on, and that, things that have been proven to be reliable and durable and all that. And also, you do have just a lot more concern about like the battery pack. A lot of these off-roading things, they're dragging, the underbody and you're bashing stuff. And, like Hummer EV has properly protected the battery, but like the way they do that, I can't remember the steel skid plate on like the underbelly of all the stuff that goes the full length of the Hummer EV. I can't remember. I think it's over a 1/4 inch thick. I think it might even, I don't know how thick it is, but it's like insanely thick, like cast iron steel, basically, that thing has, to make sure that like nothing even bumps the battery, because that's really the big thing. You bump a gas tank, or you bash a drive shaft or something, like, oh, that's crappy, but like, life goes on, versus like, you even nick the battery a tiny bit, you can either have a fire hazard, or you just have a huge issue with the battery, and that's the most valuable part of the whole thing, the whole vehicle, and that's big trouble. So I think, again, especially the intense off-road people, it's just way too high of stakes. And and even stuff like the Hummer EV that was built for that, I know at least the early ones have had trouble off-road, partially again because of that weight, but also partially just because things were breaking and all that. So maybe they've gotten better. I know just TFL did not have a good time with theirs, and so yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe that has improved. I don't know, but I think that's kind of, those are all the things going against it right now. Certainly something it'll all improve, it'll all get better. But for the time being, I think there's a lot of, EVs just in general are a little bit more delicate. I can't handle the abuse quite as much. Um, and thank you so much again, Chad, for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you for another super chat as well. He says Tesla is in the boring Toyota commuter phase. Yeah, I mean, they still have the performance versions. I think Tesla also is a victim of their own success in many ways too. It's so common on the roads because so many people bought them, at least in the past. That anything, it's like, yeah, Camrys. Like a lot of people struggle to find a Camry exciting because everyone has one. And that actually, again, that huge success hurts the appeal for certain people. Now other people will be like, wow, everyone's got a Camry, or everyone's got a Model 3, maybe I should have one too. Obviously, if everyone has one, it must be good, kind of thing. So it's, I think it might even be even Steven in the end as far as that goes. But, I think there's some of that's certainly at play there. But I mean, I guess Toyota had some slightly interesting things during their commuter phase as well. But I think, Tesla has, crazy products like Cybertruck. It's just, the problem of, again, the reputation and just, again, being a little stale for the bread and butter stuff. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat. And let me see. So where were we here? Gavin says, went to Craft Motorsports in Naples, Florida today and saw multiple R34 GTRs and Nissan Silvias S2000s. Great place to check out JDM. I drive a Mark V Supra. Very nice. Okay, well, so now it's a kind of a tie between the Countach and the R34s in my mind, but you guys can vote on who had the better spot this week, but that's also a very nice spot. All that stuff. That's awesome. And cool. You drive a Mark V Supra too. I still love those. I'm hoping to have one last go in it before it rides off into the sunset here. And Mez, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, just cleaned the interior on my 25 model year Range Rover. I must say it cleans up well, even with the Perlino color and full extended leather. Love this thing. I bet you do. That's got to be so nice. I mean, even I just had the Range Rover Sport, back over the winter, and man, talking about a super nice daily comfy cruiser. Yeah, I love Range Rovers. Honestly, like I hadn't gotten Range Rover press vehicles ever until last year. And, I just didn't have a lot of experience with them. Obviously, I knew they were nice, but I think, getting to spend a week with one really does drive home. Not only is it like a nice wow factor as far as the interior and all that, but like living with it and the smooth as butter ride and just the way they do everything is really nice, actually. And I actually think I better understand the appeal of Range Rover now than I have in the past. I still, it still gives me pause a little bit, sometimes with, you hear a horror story here or there of, electrical gremlins and things like that. Hopefully yours has been good, and hopefully, you have a great one that, lasts a good long while. But, that's really my only still thing about Range Rover that, gives me pause. But otherwise, they are fantastic. And I'm glad you're enjoying yours there. And always good to get a nice clean interior. It's always a very rewarding feeling. And thank you again for the super chat, and hope you keep enjoying that Range Rover. I'm curious if you have anything else fun, or if it's just the Range Rover, but either way, yeah, great choice there. And let me see. Harsha says Toyota and Waymo recently made a deal where Waymo tech will be used in future Toyota models. Wow, that's cool. That's really impressive. And I mean, maybe Tesla's not open to this, but like stuff like that shows me, if the largest car company in the world wants Waymo's self-driving tech and not Tesla's, that's a huge blow to the Tesla ego, with all those people thinking that, full self-driving is the best thing ever. Like, and I've said this in the past, Waymo's actually out there doing it. The stuff that Elon's talking about, Waymo's already doing it. And seems like Toyota's seeing that now as well. I haven't heard that, so thank you so much for bringing that to my attention, Harsha. I'll have to look into that, but that's cool. I didn't know Waymo was starting to, eventually license out their tech to people, but that could really bring, a full self-driving world, I think even a little quicker and a little safer, hopefully. I'm not sure. The thing is, all those Waymo cars have a zillion sensors. So whether it's Toyota trying to like do an offshoot of Waymo and still just do like taxi cab things that are owned and serviced by Toyota that aren't, regular production vehicles, or if they're actually planning on putting LiDAR sensors like Volvo and stuff is, and trying to incorporate, you know, most of those Waymo sensors, or maybe it's just software and they can do just like even level 3. So it's not like, a driverless thing, but, just more advanced stuff using the Waymo underpinnings. That might be, a solid way to go about it as well. I'm not sure, but that's really cool. Thanks for letting me know, Harsha. And Miss, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, yeah, I'm rocking the full size SE standard wheelbase P400 custom order. Nice. Went to the Sahuli assembly to see it built in person. Oh, that's awesome. I've always wanted to do one of those kind of factory deliveries. That's so cool. It says dream car, but just sold my A5. Well, sorry to hear about the A5 going, but yeah, glad you're able to get that. That's awesome. And seeing it right there at the assembly plant, it's got to be so cool. I actually just was at the assembly plant for the Ford Expedition here this week in Kentucky, and I didn't really post on social about it, but it's the drive impressions are under embargo, so I won't talk about how the Expedition drives, but everything else was free to share, I believe, as far as socials go. And it was really cool. Only the second time I've ever been in a factory for cars, and seeing them put together, the Ford Super Duties and the Expedition and the Navigator was really cool. And yeah, it's very fun. If you can ever get anyone out there, if you can get a factory tour ever, go for it. It's so cool to see, how that's actually done. So glad you're able to achieve your dream too. That has got to be such a rewarding feeling. So kudos, congrats to you. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it to the fullest. And Dan Harden, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, how do you think tariffs will affect the car industry? Well, I've been talking about this a lot in the weekly updates, over the past couple of months here. So I just try to do high level comments because this could turn into an hour-long discussion on its own. But we've already seen a lot of the effects already. We had cars that were halted at the port for a while. Some of those have started resuming, like JLR has started again re-importing here, and especially now we got the 10% deal, for the UK. I think at least as far as the UK goes, they'll have to resume business as normal, even though again taking a 10% haircut isn't ideal for them. But I think they're realizing that's as good as it's going to probably get for a while, if not for at least and possibly even for the next 4 years here. So, they're going to, get back to normal-ish stuff, but, 10% higher prices. Some companies might be able to afford to absorb some of that or all of that. Some might pass that on to consumers and have, take 10% of everything. That's easy math to do in your head. And that's the price potential of what could go up. There's also the foreign auto parts tariffs that are still happening as well. So that's another thing that can drive things up even further than just the regular 10%, thing there. So, there's that. We're also going to see, companies shift around production because especially again, if things stay at 25%, you're going to be prioritized. You can't build factories fast enough because it takes like 3 years at least to build a factory. So by the time the factories are built, Trump's going to be out of office. Who knows what the future will hold, but that's too big of a gamble to bet tens of billions of dollars on. And that's assuming you can find the workers and assuming that, you can get everything else lined up, getting the cost low enough to actually make the car case justifiable and all that. So there's a whole bunch of hurdles that building factories is not actually an option. Unless it's something companies were already planning, but I don't think anyone's going to build a factory as a result of the tariff. And so it's going to be prioritizing your current factories. And for some companies, that'll be disastrous. Like for, these companies that have no stateside production, like Mitsubishi, like, Genesis, for example, some of these companies, it's going to be a bad situation as far as pricing for those things, and it'll put them at a disadvantage compared to their competitors that might be built. For example, Lincoln Navigator, again, built right there in Kentucky. Navigator right now starts at a higher price tag than many of the others, but whenever we start tacking on extra costs on everything else, it might actually end up coming out to be a better value. So the whole value proposition of who is the value in that field is going to really change, and obviously will favor the American built vehicles. And then even then, that'll depend on how much American parts content is in them. But so there's going to be that whole kind of thing that's going to happen. And we'll also just see, again, less supply. I think we will truly see, some cars get shipped out of, like stuff like the Volkswagen ID4, not a big seller. Volkswagen would be better off building Tiguan's here, or building, any of the other mainstream sellers that aren't built in America already, bringing those in, for example, and kicking out ID4. I think we can also see this with Volvo. The Polestar 3 is currently built in South Carolina. They're not going to keep building the Polestar 3 in South Carolina. They're going to kick that thing out of there immediately, I guarantee you, and start churning out every XC90 and XC60 they can to preserve their profits for these next 4 years. And Polestar 3 will most likely drop out of the American market. I'm pretty sure, because the only other factory they have is in China, and we also have the tariff on China, 100% tariff, I believe, still from the Biden administration, that's keeping out any Chinese EV unless that changes. But and if it doesn't, like, Polestar 3 will go away. So you're going to see less choice in cars, and some companies just realizing that it doesn't make sense to sell this car in America anymore. Volvo S90 was a dated car, but they just got a refresh for China. We didn't get the refresh, and they already just pulled the plug on it because they're like, we can't, it's built in China and we can't justify it. And this is another thing, if we see, again, these, especially the trade tensions with China being super bad, Lincoln Nautilus is built in China. That's gas powered, so it wasn't affected by the Biden tariff. But now, since we have this tariff on everything, Nautilus, if they can't relocate production of that, that's they can't just absorb, especially the crazy tariffs on China. They cannot absorb those tariffs on the Nautilus. And same thing goes Buick Envision, another big seller that's built in China. So they're scrambling to find new production facilities for those two, I'm guessing. And if they can't figure it out fast enough, or even if they do figure it out, you're still going to have a 6-month gap where they have to stop production, retool a factory in America to build that, and then get production back up and running. And then again, it takes them, even when they start production, 30 to 60 days to even get those cars out to dealers. So you're talking realistically probably at least a 9-month stoppage of production for those vehicles, assuming they can find a factory in America, which is a big if on its own. So expect, if you want a Nautilus, get one while you can, because they're going to go skyrocketing in price, because it's a phenomenal vehicle and people want it, but they're not going to be able to get it here pretty soon. And Buick Envision, another big seller, maybe there'll be more people that are fine cross-shopping and finding something else to replace that. But Nautilus is, I think, a little more unique, that is really going to be sought after. So I think, you're going to see, again, some of these vehicles that either will drop out or will have stoppages. You're going to have less supply. We already screwed up the supply chain with even this stoppage that happened, at the ports in Europe, even for just a month. That screws up, and we now have a bubble of, we're going to have a month of a dry spell, at least, of none of these cars until they start rolling in again. And some of these companies, I don't think, have resumed importing still. So, Audi, I know, stopped. I think they still have paused. I don't know. Maybe they've resumed again. But we're going to have, less selection on dealer lots this summer for sure. And, higher prices for everything. Even like the Ford Maverick already got a $3,000 price bump because it's built in Mexico. So $3,000 more for a Maverick now. And this is, again, just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to keep going. And again, we're already we've opened that Pandora's box, and putting the genie back in the bottle is going to be, hard to do. So regardless, things are going to be screwed up this summer in a variety of ways, but cars, especially that, again, those supply chains have been disturbed, and there's going to be less supply. So those are going to be the most immediate effects. Beyond that, there's going to be other things down the road, depending on how long this lasts. But you could eventually see suppliers crumble. And when suppliers go down, then you can't build cars at all. And we go back to a COVID situation, like when they couldn't get the chips, where you just can't build stuff anyway. Even if you have factory workers in a factory in America, if the supplier, again, because none of these vehicles are 100% US parts content, you have one supplier, even just one. Say a car is, I think the highest American parts percentage vehicle is 85% for Tesla. So you still have 15%. If that 15% of the car can't be put into the car because that supplier went down because of tariffs, then you can't ship a completed car with 15% less content. Those are vital components. Most of that stuff, I think, for the Tesla, I think some of that's battery stuff and EV motor stuff that comes from China and other places. So All you need is 1% of that car or 0.01% of that car to not be able to come from a supplier anymore, and the whole line goes down. And and we already saw this again in America here whenever there was the tariff stuff going on with Mexico and Canada, where the manufacturing facilities in, I think, Kansas or something, had to lay off workers because they weren't getting any parts from Mexico or Canada anymore, and then they got nothing to do. So then we lose out with even the factory workers we have here. So again, there's all these domino effects that I don't think have been properly accounted for, because again, we're already seeing negative side effects of that, and maybe the believers think that this will someday all sort itself out. These are just temporary pains. I'd love to be wrong, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. But we'll see what happens. So that's in a nutshell here my, I don't know how many minutes that was, rant. But if you have any follow-up questions, feel free. I don't want to drive too many people away with with my tariff ranting, but always happy though to answer any questions. I'm an open book here on this stuff, and I've given up the attempt of trying to avoid politics here. It's too intertwined anymore. It used to be you could be neutral and be ambiguous about your political beliefs, but it's gotten too political with everything these days. It started with the EV thing, and now it's just going into everything, and it's just there's no way to try and be neutral anymore. So that's why I gave up and trying to be mysterious with my with my views. Jeremy, thanks so much for being a member for 3 years now. I really appreciate that, Jeremy. And he says Lyric or Wagoneer S. I'd go Lyric for sure. It's a nicer interior. It's more impressive. It drives better. And I think it has the kinks worked out a little bit better now, since Lyric has been around a little bit longer and it's had the software updates and stuff. Wagoneer S is very fresh. That STLA platform, I think, still needs a little bit of fine tuning. So I'd go Lyric. I think Wagoneer S is very promising, though. I think it's very much has a lot of potential, and I think it's just one of those vehicles. I think I'd personally give it wait for the second model year, and wait for some a few little updates to come out, and then should be good. Because for example, not the Wagoneer S, but when I was in the One Charger EV. On the media drive on the one of the cars I was driving, the AC just didn't work. That's an old school problem, but it's that press car in particular, AC didn't work. So I just things like that give me pause. So I'd go Lyric for sure. And thank you again so much, Jeremy, for 3 years of support. And Kavandra, thank you so much for a super chat. He says, in regards to the brands pushing out their first EV cars, who do you feel will have the best success with conversion? A lot of companies already have. So as far as, the kind of the success we're already seeing, I think Hyundai's really come out strong with their first generation, again, being these 800 volt, I guess technically second gen, since they had some of the older EV stuff before Ioniq 5 and 6 and all that. But, the 800 volt thing being super fast charging really, I think, set them apart from the rest. And I think that's honestly what sold a lot of Ioniq 5s and Ioniq 6s, and Kia EV6 and all that by extension. They're also the first to do a 3-row electric vehicle that had real size, and wasn't the Model X, or I guess the Rivian's, smaller jump seat in the back, but a traditional 3-row, crossover. I think, EV9 was kind of the first there. So I think that Hyundai and Kia are really the ones that, to me, that impressed me the most and have had the best success switching over so far. I think you will also see the companies that have the best success are companies that have the least exciting powertrains. So, anyone where it's a very forgettable powertrain, I think that's going to be really good. For example, I think Audi is a prime example. They have some really cool stuff like the twin turbo V8 and the RS models and all that. But all the 4-cylinder powered A4s and A6s and stuff that we've had, even the 6-cylinder, it's nice, but it's nothing, that stands out. So I think Audi's a prime candidate, outside of the RS stuff, the regular commuter stuff, having the EV thing is great, and it's certainly an improvement, and especially companies that have had bad powertrains where they have, crappier transmissions. Honestly, Hyundai, in a way, they've had some issues with the dual clutches not being smooth and stuff. that's the perfect thing. You know, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff with the electric Hyundais. And so other companies like that, where again you've struggled with transmission calibration in the past, or powertrains not being the best, the EV thing really improves that, because EV motors are much simpler, and generally there's less moving parts, so you would hope that they will be more reliable than their gas counterparts. So there's those types of ones where I think they stand the best chance of really capitalizing on that switchover. Yeah, I mean, I think it also conversely can hurt the companies that do have characteristic powertrains, like Subaru. I think is really struggling with this, because their two big things were boxer engines and symmetrical all-wheel drive. And the symmetrical all-wheel drive thing kind of was already a marketing thing in a way, but it was a mechanical all-wheel drive system, and that is key thing. They're still even leaning into that. Like, I currently actually have a Forester hybrid right now this week for the press vehicle, where it has a mechanical all-wheel drive system, and that's a big differentiator over like the RAV4 hybrid, for example, which has the e-axle. And if you live in a place where you really do a lot of winter driving and stuff, having the actual full all-wheel drive is really important to a lot of people. And so that's very important. Then whenever Subaru is doing these conversions to EV, like the Solterra just being a Toyota, there's no unique thing there as far as Subaru engineering. It's an electric motor. It's not going to be a boxer electric motor. There's no way to make it Subaru. And same thing with the all-wheel drive system. Like, it's just a very precise dual motor setup and is all-wheel drive by nature, but that's not, there's nothing unique about their all-wheel drive. Sure, they can calibrate it a little differently, but like, the aim of everyone's all-wheel drive calibrations is like good traction. So like, as long as you're doing your job right as an engineer, there's not going to be anything unique about a Subaru all-wheel drive system in an electric age either. So I think Subaru is one of the companies that has one of the biggest problems currently as far as mainstream brands goes. But then this is also a problem for Porsche. The flat six motor is the real advantage. They've already said there's not going to be an electric 911 this decade. It's going to be a long time before that happens. But if we do ever go into a world where, again, everything is basically 100% electric, how do you make the 911 appealing? Obviously, again, there's different ways of doing this. And I think Porsche is experimenting with like stacking the batteries in a mid-engine location. We're seeing this, I think, first in the new Boxer and Cayman, EV, where they're playing around with different battery placements, which I think will be very important to differentiate and give these cars feel, especially, the sports cars. So I think, those types of things are certainly going to be a nice step in the right direction as far as at least the handling feel. But again, powertrain, you're going to lose all that uniqueness. And this is why, Ferrari just announced this week that they are doing a different launch, basically delaying the electric Ferrari for a while, because it's only, I think, a 6-month delay, but I think they're kind of struggling with how do we do this to make it exciting. Now they're saying they're going to do some exhaust sounds, it seems like, and some other gimmicky kind of stuff like we saw in Ioniq 5N, and people love Ioniq 5N. So I think that is probably the way Ferrari's going to try and go to replicate some of that specialness. But one, the people that have that kind of money, they already have EVs. If they want to have an EV daily driver, they don't need an electric Ferrari. They buy a Ferrari because they want the Ferrari sound. And that's the real problem is, again, Ferrari is going to be going up against these fines, in the next few years. And it's like, do they just bundle that in and make every Ferrari $1 million car? Or do they, try these electric things and try it out and try to comply and see what happens? But they're kind of in a pickle still. And so, it's gonna be a struggle for some, but I think it'll be a nice perk for others. And again, it's the most drastic change in the auto industry we've seen in a long time as far as how things are done. Again, tariffs are a whole nother thing that also is unprecedented in a lot of ways. But I think the EV transition will really kind of level the playing field in many ways, and also really, make things a lot harder for others. Great question. Thanks so much for asking, Kavandra, and thank you again for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says, slightly political. If Trump is all in on American built, then why no showcase of Ford vehicles on the White House lawn? I think you know the answer to that, because Jim Farley isn't working in the White House and Elon Musk is. And also, again, Elon's the richest person in the world. That's going to make an impact on anybody, but especially Trump. And so I think, that's, and I mean, maybe Trump feels guilty in a way that, he's tanking Tesla by association. And so, he's trying to help out his buddy there. But yeah, um, it's not about the American built thing. That's not really what it's about. Obviously, because again, you're right. He would be boosting Ford way more. He'd be doing more for the American car companies if that was truly what he wanted to do. And so, yeah, Tesla's just the special golden goose, and that's that's why they got the car show on the White House lawn and no one else did. Maybe others will join eventually. We'll see. But I see also says, yeah, Dodge, GM, yeah, all of them. I mean, and not even just the American three. I mean, again, look at like Nissan has said, we build a ton of stuff in America, and Nissan's not super mad about the tariffs because they're actually in a better position than I think most other Japanese brands because they build so much stuff in America. And so where's the shout out for Nissan? Where is the shout out for, I mean, Toyota builds a ton of stuff. Look, I mean, they build all the Camrys here. They build, some of the RAV4s. They build the Corolla Cross here exclusively. And they're the largest company in the world as far as car companies goes. Like, and they have a ton of factories here in the States. And so, yeah, and that's kind of why I think this stuff isn't super well thought through. Because if you really look at who has invested the most, I mean, obviously, again, Ford is definitely one of the top ones. But there's a lot of foreign car companies. I think the Japanese have tried in their negotiations to be like, look, like, do you see how much we've invested? How much we will continue to invest? Toyota already announced, this expansion. This was back again a couple of years ago to build some new EVs here in the States here, I believe, starting next year. I think that factory is still under construction, if I remember correctly. But like these are things that they've been doing. Like this isn't, spurred by any political movement. Like they've been increasing their American production for decades. And so, why don't they get any credit? There is just all this kind of stuff that, yeah. I'll just leave it at that. But that's, it's, yeah, it's just something that's, I think, could be better executed, I suppose, if we're really going for the goals that we're saying we're going for. But anyway, thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. And Justin, thanks so much for being a member for 33 months now. He says, non-car question, but what's your favorite restaurant, either local and or chain? It's hard to pick just one. It's kind of like when people ask me my favorite car. It's hard to pick just one. I think, one of my favorite local ones that I always love enjoying is Permanis. They, for anyone who's unfamiliar with Pittsburgh stuff, it's a deli sandwich essentially that has coleslaw and French fries on the sandwich. It was made for truckers back like 100 years ago who needed everything and they were driving and they needed to eat while driving. And so it just had the whole meal right on the sandwich there. And it's a very huge thing. You got to, crack open your jaw to get in your mouth there. And they're very tasty and very good. So that's always one of my favorites. As far as other restaurants, I don't know. There's a bunch. Hofbrauhaus is actually one of my favorites. If anyone, that's kind of a chain that's I think I don't know, like 15 locations or something around the country. They're really good because I love German food. And there's a lot of mainstream stuff. Red Robin's always solid choice, things like that. And there's a few like local places that are really good, but I'm trying to think of other ones that really stand out to me. I'm pretty easy to please, though, as far as all kinds of chains I'm totally fine with. I'm not as much of a foodie as I'd like to be as far as like trying out interesting new foods and locations and stuff like that. I get to do a lot of that on the press trips. That is actually a really fun perk of that is, the fancy meals we sometimes have. Like I remember last year on the Lexus GX drive, we were in the middle of like the Arizona desert and they flew in this like Michelin, I don't know how many star chef, who legitimately, and I don't say this with any exaggeration whatsoever, cooked the best meal I have ever had in my life. Like truly, it was like, I don't know how, 5 or 7 courses. Everyone was phenomenal. It's one of the few places I've actually like taken a picture of like our courses for the evening because it was so good. So yeah, that's really my fine dining experiences are often just on the press trips. Now sometimes it's unremarkable. A lot of times it's like I'm basically having like wedding kind of food. It's like buffet style and the usual kind of stuff you eat at weddings. So that it's not always like a mind blowing experience. But occasionally they take us to a cool restaurant or again have a cool chef come in and custom make a meal that's really phenomenal. I think probably the other, again, I know this isn't totally on topic with your question, but my other like real standout thing that I had food wise was whenever we were in Hawaii for the Toyota Grand Highlander drive and the Toyota Tacoma launch. It was all bundled into like 1 week on Kona there. We actually did a legit luau where like they buried the pigs in the ground and did the whole like thing, and that pork was amazing, and the mai tais and seeing the spitting fire, like legit, like they spent some money at Toyota for that giant luau we had. For like, it seemed like every journalist that's ever worked with Toyota was there, and it was really really cool. So that was another one of the like standout like lifetime things, a legit luau in Hawaii there. And it was phenomenal. So those are probably the top two favorite dining experiences there. And fun question. Thanks so much for asking, Justin. And thank you also for almost 3 years of support as well. I really appreciate it. And so let me see here. I'm getting caught up on the member questions as well, but thank you all so much for all the super chats. I really appreciate that. And so let me see. I'm glad we have so many questions too. I mean, we have about half as many people watching here tonight as we usually do. Still such great conversation here. So this is really happy to see this. Hopefully anyone who's watching this tomorrow during the usual time tomorrow can also still have a nice live stream here, even if it's not live. So let me see. I see Recipe says I miss Top Gear, how it was. I do miss Top Gear as well. And Raphael said, I also passed a black Cybertruck coming home from work. Still an ugly vehicle. Agreed. Vishal says, totally agree on the new X3s in my area. They are really getting common. I don't go a day without seeing one now. Definitely agree. People bought before tariffs, ourselves included with the TX. Nice. Yeah. And I mean, me too with the Fiat, although it was before the tariffs were announced. But for me, it was the worry about the tax credit going away, which surprisingly is still around. I have to say I was wrong about that. I thought that would have bit the dust a lot faster than it has, with it still being here. B. Mitchell said, read my Yugo comments in the weekly update. Okay, I'll check it out. I must have missed those in regards to our discussion there earlier. And OK Basis says, what do you call Yugo with a flat tire? Totaled. That's a good one. Triton Car Guy says, I saw what looked to be a restored SN95 Mustang GT convertible. Was a bit too nice to be a survivor. Nice. That's cool. You saw an SN95. A neighbor of mine actually has the what's the like refresh SN95 is called, the Terminator style of those SN95s, like the refresh of it, I guess you could say. He has a black GT convertible he takes out. We see him run around with the top down every once in a while, and he's enjoying that. That was his fun little run around car, and so it's good to see a Mustang in the neighborhood every once in a while still. And Armina said, I saw red Ferrari California in Napa. Very nice. And kudos on being in Napa. I should have mentioned that earlier for my spot. I did actually just this afternoon see a Ferrari 488 in red, and he did like a nice downshift too as he was pulling into a parking spot. And I'm still such a Ferrari fanboy. See, Kraken says we hung out enough as far as he was at a car meet there earlier. Well, I'm glad you can join then, Kraken. Thanks so much. And Hyper Shadow says, happy early Mother's Day to mothers out there, especially those having to work tomorrow and those unable to spend their special day with their loved ones. You aren't forgotten. Very true. Thanks for saying that. And shout outs to all the hardworking moms out there. They don't get nearly enough appreciation. So yeah, hope everyone has a great Mother's Day and treats their mothers and every significant woman in their life that maybe even isn't a mother but has that kind of a place in their heart. I hope we all appreciate them and treat them great tomorrow and every day for that matter. Let me see. Chad, thank you so much for a super chat. He says Cybertrucks look better with a wrap and it holds the truck together. I didn't think about holding the truck together, but valid points. It's a good one. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, hearing your thoughts on the White House lawn promos, Ford, Nissan, Toyota, Dodge, GM, etc., have dodged a bullet, non-complicit with this administration. That's true. Yeah, I don't think anyone was complaining. I don't think anyone was jealous of the White House car show. Yeah, I think all the car companies are happy to, kind of hang out in the shadows there and get the favorable treatment possibly, but I don't think any of them want that limelight. Not the kind of promotion you want, I think, for most companies. And let me see. Where were we here? So Michelle says, saw a couple more Charger EVs on the road. Pretty cool looking car. Nice. I haven't seen any since the first one or two I saw a couple of weeks ago, but I'm glad you're seeing more of them pop up. That's great. Again, they're leasing super cheap, so that's probably explains a lot of it, but I'm glad to see, well, even with a cheap lease, that people are going for them. And I do think they look phenomenal. I agree. The Trenton Car Guy says, I suppose that since the Model 3 is a pure EV, I'm used to the hybrids at work, lacking then the noise from the gas motor makes it feel dull. Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Pepper Shadow says, also, do you know where you go to go find Yugos? I was trying to rhyme. Also, never seen a Yugo. And Lost says Pluto. That's a good guess. Probably just as common there as they are anywhere else, at least in America here, where they've all rusted decades ago. And Michelle says, was also filling up my Jetta at Costco gas today, and one of the attendants complimented my car. I felt good, as it was the first time anyone ever complimented any car of mine. That's awesome. It definitely does feel good for sure. And yeah, it's great. I hope everyone gets to feel that at some point in their life, and has a car they're proud of and a car that other people appreciate too. It's definitely a lot of fun. Congrats on that. And Vancy says, I appreciate you and the straight pipes not letting up on the BS that is GM not offering CarPlay on EVs. Well, I'm glad you appreciate it, but man, every CarPlay hater just comes out of the woodwork on every GM vehicle. I swear, it's like people that are like subscribed to me solely to like keep an eye on my comments on GM EVs. And then the second I say a single word, bam, they're there to tell me I'm wrong and I don't need CarPlay and I don't have CarPlay and it's fine. It's so it's exhausting dealing with the comments here on the Blazer and also on the Optic here this week. It's I hate it, but it is what it is. Thankfully, I'm not reviewing any new GM EVs. I don't think for a good while, at least a few months here, so I can give myself a break from all the people that are annoyed about that. I mean, I don't want to be annoying. I know no one likes to hear people rant about the same thing over and over again. I feel like I kept my comments shorter in the past few than I have, originally. But again, what people don't realize is I'm not doing this video for the people that already own the car. I'm not doing this video for the fans that are just interested in the car. I do these videos because 70 or more % of my viewers are non-subscribers, and they're people who watch and then they figure out what car they want and then they never watch until they need another car. And so for those people, they're not aware of what's out in the marketplace. They don't know what's normal. If you've been out of the car marketplace for 5 or 10 years, you don't know what to expect. You don't know, oh, like this is the infotainment system. Like everyone maybe got rid of CarPlay 5 years ago. It's like, no, like everyone else offers CarPlay. And so I think it's very important, again, this might be, for those of you who, thank you so much, but watch every video or watch, all the time. I'm sure some of the stuff I say gets old real quick and you probably roll your eyes every time you hear me say the same thing I've said 5 times before. But again, I'm doing that video for the person that's watching me for the first time, because that's, again, the majority of my viewers and people who, again, are not car experts, and trying to inform them on what's out there. So they're not just saying, oh, well, I guess I'll just go back to using my phone for phone calls in the car and just use this thing GM's given me, and like letting people know you don't have to settle. You don't have to compromise. Other companies offer a no compromise approach. And even GM, again, just go buy a Lyric. Anyone who loves GM EVs, just go get a Lyric. They're cheap enough. You can lease a Lyric for like $400 a month. So it's not even like a price barrier, really. I know 400 isn't like available to everyone a month, but if you are in the market for a GM EV, just get a Lyric and then you have your CarPlay and you're good. That's that's, a possibility for us next year whenever the Mach-E lease is up. I love the Optic, and if it had CarPlay, I would strongly consider the Optic next year, assuming we can afford it, which is a big, unknown right now. But assuming, that we were still shopping for $50,000 EVs like we were when we got the Mach-E 3 years ago, Optic would very much be a contender, except, again, that's not, there's no CarPlay. So we'd go Lyric, and you can get one of those, so cheap anyway, it'd be fine. And also used market, even if you're not buying new. But anyway, yeah, it's been annoying, but I'm glad you appreciate that, Fancy. But just wanted to give you guys, if you do see me repeating myself or saying, the same kind of things over and over again, it's, I apologize again for those who are regular viewers, but it's truly just the data just shows me that like a huge majority of people have never seen me before, have never watched a video before, and this is, their first experience with me giving them a review. And so I want to make sure that they're aware of everything that's out there, and do the best review I can for them, so they're the most informed they can possibly be. Let me see. Armino says GM also rebadged a BYD commercial van. I didn't realize that. Is that in the States? I know BYD did do some commercial stuff here, but I don't know the status of that. But that's interesting. Thanks for letting me know. And Luke says, I had a delivery at my company's headquarters earlier this week. The boss let me drive his Lexus RC350 to go get takeout. That was a pretty fun vehicle. That's awesome. Yeah, RC350s are great. And I mean, that Lexus V6 is super reliable. That's a car that looks fantastic, holds its value well, and will run until the end of time. Really a great choice if you're looking for especially a high mileage commuter that's comfortable. I love RCs. I think that's another car that didn't get the credit it deserved. Let me see. Linda, thank you so much for a super chat. She says, I really wish the CD players were standard. I know, I'm sad that they went away. And yeah, it is strange that anyone, I mean, I guess maybe I'm showing my age here. Obviously, having all your music in your pocket and all that, I think really, was started with the iPhone and MP3 players and all that. But I think, yeah, it would have been nice to see CD players continue on in cars. I mean, I have to commend Subaru. They still have an option to put it into the center armrest there from the factory, or I think it might be a dealer installed option. Yeah, it is kind of amazing because I still miss the ease of use of a CD, just popping it in, and even just making my own mixtapes on CD, and burning my own custom CDs and stuff was so fun. So I miss them just as much as you do, Linda. And yeah, thanks for stopping by, and thank you so much for the super chat. She says the best mom vehicle is a Prius. A great mom vehicle for sure. Yeah. And let me see here. Where were we? Harsha says, if Tesla truly is an AI company first, then their cars would probably all go away. I think that's why they are not updating their cars regularly, as making cars aren't their long-term goal. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. But then if that's, I mean, I guess they say that kind of in their earnings calls and stuff. But then that, where does that leave owners, and where does that leave, it's just like the support network. If you're not interested in supporting this stuff forever, and you're, going on to something else, then if the cars were just kind of a fun fad you were cashing in on for, 15 or 20 years, then, like, that's fine. But like, then, then Tesla's not a car company. They're, an AI company. They're a technology company, whatever. And then, they will come and they will go maybe. And all the other legacy car companies that have been around for over 100 years will keep on doing their thing and focusing on what they are best at, which is making cars, and so, yeah, it's up to whoever's running Tesla and what they want to do, I suppose. And Cooper says, just looked it up. It was the Bright Drop. Thank you. Love watching your content. I'm glad we figured it out. He says, always keep an eye out for your content. Since 2016, you're a big reason for why I'm so into cars now. That's awesome. Thanks so much, Cooper, for that comment. And it's always grateful to hear, people either able to find a car thanks to the videos that they like, or just into cars as a result of that. That's really cool to hear. It's actually been a while since someone said that, the channel helped them get into cars in general. So that's really cool. So thank you so much, Cooper, for that. And thanks so much for the support too. That it really means a lot. I'm so grateful for so many of you that I've been watching and kind of we've all kind of grown up together in many ways, and I'm so grateful for that. And let me see. Harsha says other manufacturers are already making good EVs. Yeah, I agree. And Jordan says Ford needs to bring back the large Taurus as a hybrid and EV. That would be really cool. I agree. That would be fun. And Kavanja, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, should Nissan come back or lay low for now? I mean, Nissan, I think, is in the middle of a comeback. You know, they have the Kicks, which is phenomenal. The Armada is more competitive than it ever has been. Murano is new and I think better in many ways. And, I think that they're already kind of doing it. I think, time will tell, but they are right. Like they have a lot of production in the States and they are actually very well positioned for this rocky, period we have here for some unspecified amount of time. And so it may actually, it's so crazy, but like the tariffs may potentially be Nissan's saving grace. Honestly, even the uglier it gets for tariffs, the better it will be in some ways for Nissan. Again, I think it's going to be a low, like, the rising tide lifts all boats, except it'll be the opposite. It'll be, the dropping tide will drop all boats. So, I mean, there will be less volume still because people will have less money to spend on cars if things get bad. But again, the Nissans will continue to be able to afford to have the pricing edge by a long shot compared to some of the other competitors, because of just how much American production they have. So, and I think Nissan, back in the fall was, the rumor was they had like 12 to 16 months to live, at least as far as financially goes before they, go bankrupt or whatever. And we haven't heard any new rumors or anything about that. And I think that now their fortunes have changed because of the tariff thing. And the fact that like Kicks has sold really well so far. And it seems like their new products people are taking notice of. And I mean, I see a decent amount of new Kicks out on the road already, not as much as X3s, but I see, a lot of those and even Armadas springing up, already and stuff. So I'm hoping that, Nissan's going to be okay. Because I mean, I think, again, I've always been very much an admirer of Nissan in many ways. They do really competitive products that I think don't get enough credit, like Sentra. I still think Sentra, I think it's fair to say it's maybe Kia K4 is slightly better now, but I think that Sentra has one of the plushest interiors in that segment, yet it comes in at like one of the lowest prices in that segment. And no one gives it any appreciation. Like, I mean, Sentra has some downfalls. The crash testing is not the best in the segment, and it has a little less power than some of the others. So there's, nothing's perfect. But if you want a plush compact sedan, I think Sentra is still probably one of the best choices. Has the zero gravity seats, like so comfortable, and like no one is shouting from the rooftops other than me saying that Sentra is like the greatest thing. Like I love the Sentra, and every chance I get it to say that, in my reviews, I do because it's great. So I think hopefully some people start to take more notice of these things. Sentra did have a phenomenal year last year, sales wise. So I mean, I'm hoping that, again, more and more people see this new Nissan. I think a lot of people are burned by the old CVT, by the old crappier quality, during the Ghostin years that really kind of, tainted the, reputation of Nissan. But I hope that people give it another chance. Just go into a dealer, sit in one, maybe take one for a test drive, whatever, and kind of, just see, again, I'm sounding like a salesperson here, but seeing the new generation of products that they have, it really, I think, will surprise a lot of people. And again, combined with the low price tag, and if that continues to be the case in this tariff era of having some of the lowest prices, maybe even by a larger margin, I think that could really help them. But I really hope Nissan does come back and comes back stronger than ever. Just if for no other reason, selfishly, so we can get an awesome new GTR, because I do love those cars to my core. And Jordan, thank you for our super chat as well. He says, when a phone is wirelessly connected to a vehicle, can you voice command Siri or Google to play a specific track or playlist? Yeah. I think both will do that. Google, in my experience, isn't quite as good at that, but Siri nails it just about every time now. If I say, I actually was doing it, this week on a road trip that I was on. When I was driving back from Kentucky, I was in an Escalade, just super cruising for 6 hours straight there. And I did Siri for that specific thing. I was like, because especially the Escalade, Cliff Notes still has one of the best stereos in a car, in my opinion, in the world. And so I was just like, "Ooh, I want to listen to this album." And so I'd say, "Hey Siri, listen to this or whatever," and or play this album or whatever, and it did that flawlessly. And some of this other stuff, I mean, the native, and this is exactly my point. I promise I will keep this to like 30 seconds. But Beth has been starting to do more and more voice commands and trying that out in a lot of these other vehicles, including some that have a Google Assistant, just for tuning radio stations, because our daughter now likes the Disney radio stations, which are like way up, like they're like 195 or whatever the channel number is. And so instead of trying to remember that and find those stations, she'll just like try and do the voice commands for that. And that is like very much hit or miss, usually a miss. Like we tried it like a Pulsar 3, Google Assistant, like just crap in that as far as doing that. You'll see that in my Pulsar review that's coming soon. And then, we just had like this Forester hybrid we have. We just did it. We just tried to do it again today. She tried to get it, and she was trying to pull up, there's a Disney Junior lullaby station because her daughter was going to be taking a nap in the car. And we just like said that, and like the Subaru's stupid infotainment system was like Disney Junior lullabies, or like something that made no sense, like a word that's not even in the English dictionary. And it was like, oh, that's what they said, not lullaby. Like incredibly dim-witted, stupid system still as far as voice commands goes. And that would have been a no issue thing for Siri. And again, Google still also has not been perfect with that, in my opinion. So again, I'm not here to be a Apple fanboy. It's just my experience is that Siri has been the best performer as far as recognizing that stuff. Google certainly is going to be better than most of these other systems. Like the Subaru one is especially bad and still is so slow. But yeah, it's these, and this is GM kept saying, oh, our voice system's great, and using Google certainly helps, but like, especially when they don't use Google, like, man, they just are so bad still. Most of them with trying to do the voice stuff, it's just not good. And this is why it's not a good alternative to just tapping on your screen and clicking on your phone icons that you're used to on your phone. It's just, it takes longer, assuming it even actually works. It's just, it's still just not good. So that's why if you can't beat them, join them. Everyone agreed on this back in 2015, 2016, and they still are just not learning their lesson. And now GM's trying to go back and make the same mistake they made before CarPlay. But anyway, thank you, Jordan, for the super chat. And Raphael says the water bottle just isn't doing it. For a 2-hour stream, you should have a nice glass of bourbon with your followers. Yeah, I guess one glass of bourbon, I wouldn't be too loose-lipped, but I would worry if I ever did a more inebriated live stream. I would probably go down even more rabbit holes and rants, and and be a little less restrained with my comments, I guess I should say. Because it was so fun. I was talking to someone else on a media drive this week about being like, man, like some of the stuff that like I wish I could just like, just whether it's annoying things that I see sometimes, or just some of the stupid videos I see on YouTube these days in the automotive sector, and just stuff I don't agree with, that I'd like to, go off on. And if I had some bourbon in me, I may actually be tempted to do that. So it's probably in my best interest not to, but it's certainly, he says, not getting plastered, just an occasional sip with the group. Yeah. I mean, maybe that'll be something we can do here in the future. But honestly, like I barely even drink water here. I'm just always yapping a mile a minute here. So not a whole lot of opportunities for nice long sips of appreciation of a good solid bourbon there. But man, I was in Kentucky and I'm so upset. I was in Louisville and we were driving past all the exits for like the bourbon trail or whatever, all the different, distilleries, and didn't have a single. Okay, I did have bourbon. It was in a mixed old fashioned thing that was like a pre-made mix that I should have known better than to get, because all those pre-made things are, at least most of them, are not very good. This was like a wedding bar kind of like old-fashioned thing, just not good. That's the only bourbon I actually consumed. But yeah, so I'm hoping next time I get to Kentucky, I can actually, appreciate the bourbons of the area. But Yeah, thank you, Raphael, for the super chat. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat as well. He says Bill Gates is Windows, Steve Jobs is Apple. Who is Android? I guess technically you kind of Android's different than Google, right? I know they're kind of blended together now. But I guess whoever started Google, whoever that is, maybe you could kind of loosely say Larry Page. Harsha says, but I think is the person I'm thinking of. I don't know. Yeah, that'd probably be my guess. And Hyper Shadow, thank you for a super chat as well. He says Tipsy Matt during a live stream would be wild. Yeah, I don't know. I think you guys should be careful what you wish for. I don't know if you'd actually enjoy it as much as you think you would. It'd probably just end up me being really annoying, honestly. Let me see though. Where were we here? I see the laughs there in the agreement. And let me see. So B Mitchell says Hyper Shadow. Again, talking about the Yugos. So wow, I didn't hear this. 87 Yugo with 22,000 miles at an MAG auction in Arizona in January, sold for $6,000 on the hammer. Also know a Lincoln collector who has one in his unlucky 13 cars collection. Wow, $6,000 at auction with 22. I mean, simply as like a museum piece, you'd think the Yugo would have gone for more than that. That's wow. I didn't realize it was that bad of a scenario for them. And I already had a very low bar. So that's that's pretty remarkable. Thanks for that anecdote, V. Mitchell. Vishal says, worst interior design trends for me, the notable ones are passenger screens and lack of buttons and knobs. Yeah, the buttons and knobs thing, I think, is certainly something that irks me, a good bit these days. And I think overly complicated screens are also annoying to me. I think this isn't technically an interior thing. The most annoying thing I've found in the past year is people ditching keys. Polestar, you'll unfortunately hear me rant about this in the Polestar review again coming next month. But I talked about this in the Rivian that didn't have an actual key. And I hate the dependence on a card key or the phone as key. Neither of those work as well as a fob, in my opinion. Some phone as key when you're using your actual phone is usually good. It's still not 100%, but that's at least slightly better. But for a lot of these press cars, they don't give me access to the phone as key thing, so I have to use a card key, and that's just the worst. And it's crazy how much I was taking easy access into a car for granted. And man, the pain that it has been with some of these new vehicles, they're like, oh yeah, here's a card key. It's great. You keep it in your wallet. You never have to worry. It doesn't work that well. It's horrible in many cases. Again, I'll save my Polestar rant for the actual review, and you can hear it there or skip it as you wish. But that's the biggest annoyance for me. But yeah, passenger screens, though, honestly, I didn't think it was a necessary thing, but some more and more of these vehicles we've been having recently, Beth has actually appreciated the passenger screen. I talk about this, you'll see in my Audi SQ6 e-tron review that's coming out. I'm so far behind, I built up a little bit of a backlog again here. So you'll be seeing this more and more here in the next few weeks. But passenger screens, I'm not as mad about as I was when they first came out. Now seeing that it actually, at least in Beth's opinion, is a nice handy feature. For again those high-end cars and stuff, but certainly still not needed, I don't think, for sure. And Zachary, thanks for stopping by. He says, what is the non-luxury car with the quietest interior on the highway? I mean, it's probably going to be a Mazda. I think Mazda easily pick your segment. Mazda is going to probably have the quietest non-luxury ride in the segment. They do a very good job focusing on that and benchmarking others. I think they said CX-5 is comparable interior noise to a Mercedes GLC. So we're talking luxury car levels of quiet in most Mazdas. Miata excluded, but they do a really good job. So I'd say they're definitely the winner in that aspect, in my opinion. So CB Mitchell's saying it's smart with the harvester range extender for the Scout. I agree. I think that was really brilliant that they did that. And I see B. Mitch also, our discussion earlier about the off-roading stuff, says a big choice he sees in the southwestern desert is the 84 and a 98 Jeep Cherokee. Yeah, those do seem to be really popular with a lot of people. And maybe they're nice and cheap now. I feel like they've started going up in value, but maybe not. But yeah, I think that's a very popular one for sure. And let me see. Sorry, I missed the other super chats here coming in. I apologize, guys. Chad, thank you for a super chat. He says, very political question. When will voice commands understand the Southern accent and our of our neighbor or Cajun neighbors? Yeah, that's also another problem with voice commands. I feel like it's a very short-sighted, possibly privileged kind of viewpoint to be like, oh, I'll just do voice commands, like it understands me fine. And obviously these are built to handle multiple language models and all that, but for different dialects and people who aren't mainstream clear speaking dominant languages in the world kind of people, like you leave them by the wayside if you're going to do all this voice command stuff. It's not a perfect solution. And again, these things aren't a one size fits all thing, which is why it's important to give people multiple ways to interact with stuff, because it's not a one size fits all solution. And that's why the only thing that hurts GM on is just the subscription money. That's the whole. It's that, and I think it also is the data component. But I truly think GM is just hoping for a gold mine whenever all these things go off of their trial subscription. If you lose Google Maps routing, if you lose these Google Voice commands, if you lose all this stuff, then your infotainment basically doesn't work. At least it doesn't work half as well as it used to. So they have you, by the neck there as far as making you pay GM forever to keep your car's infotainment system working. That's what the play is with CarPlay. Because if you have CarPlay or Android Auto, you don't have to do that anymore, because then you don't have to worry about a data connection. It's just that they want you to have that data connection. They want you to pay that. Honestly, I'm surprised GM hasn't tried to reintroduce car phones and try and get people to be like, hey, look, you can, never have your phone on you at all and just do everything in the car. Because I think that's truly what they're trying to go for, is like they just want a piece of that action. But I think the thing that they're not thinking about is that I think most of these things, at least for now, the trial for the data is like an 8-year trial for GM for the Google built-in, having all the data streaming and stuff. It might be less. I don't know, but I think some of them have been like an 8-year thing. So that's a long time. And obviously, if you're leasing or you're an average buyer that flips cars every 5 years or whatever, not going to be an issue for you. Not a problem. But, think of the average person that owns a vehicle that's 8 years or older. Do you think, again, these are people that are buying an 8-year-old or older used vehicle. These are not people that have a ton of money to spend. Do you think they want to spend 5, 10, whatever, how much money it is a month on a subscription to keep the car working? What it's going to do is it's just going to like completely annihilate the depreciation curve of GM EVs, because people are going to say, maybe again, these new owners that are spending 50 grand aren't going to be worried about this. So you might not see these effects immediately, but mark my words, in 5 years when these things are starting to come up and people are having to start to worry about, oh, wait, if I buy this car, I'm going to have to start paying it for a subscription in the near future or immediately. That's going to be a detractor from buying that versus the other competitors where you don't have to do that. Where, even if some of the stuff doesn't work, maybe if your app doesn't work on your phone anymore, big whoop-de-doo, who cares? Like, you still have your CarPlay and you still have all the same function of your car. But with the GMs, you won't, without paying GM for the rest of your life that car is on the road. That's why they're doing it, I think. The data thing also, I think, is a valid point, but I don't even think it's that much anymore. I think it's truly they want to force people into subscriptions, and that's the way to do it, is by not letting them have CarPlay or Android Auto. So I think I've finally figured out the main driver. I think that is it. They want everyone to pay them $10 a month or whatever for every 8-year-old or older vehicle eventually on the road. And that's a huge amount of money. So I'm sure the accountants were, high-fiving everyone in the boardroom when that, that was decided. But and that's a long-term play. So we're not going to see, that be a benefit for GM for a long time. But I think, they're really counting on that, and that's why they're sticking to their guns here, despite all the blowback, despite all the complaints from everyone. They know they're sitting on a gold mine if they keep it up and can convince enough people to still keep buying these vehicles and still, and put up with that. And again, I love these vehicles. That's the thing that sucks, is I absolutely think GM is doing some of the best EVs out there right now. I've been very complimentary. I said the optic was almost perfect, with the only issues being the lack of CarPlay, the lack of a rear wiper, and the lack of a external lock button on the car. Those are the only three things I didn't like about it. Everything else was actually perfect. Like, that's been one of the most glowing reviews I've given in a while. And so, I mean, I absolutely love it. And so I will give credit where credit is due, and I gave it a ton of credit. But like, those are giant issues in my opinion. I mean, especially again, just because of the premise of what it means. It's not just because I can't use my apps. It's because like you have to pay them for the rest of the car's life, eventually. And that's just, to me, not a very likable thing, especially we know people hate subscriptions, and so to me it's just so I don't know. Time will tell. We'll see. Maybe by that point, subscribing to stuff in your car will be the norm, and maybe GM will get away with it, and maybe they'll be right, and they will have done the right thing for their business, and it won't have the blowback that I'm thinking it might have. But I just think it's going to crush the values of these things once they get close to that expiration mark for the subscriptions. So anyway, sorry for the little rant there, but Jordan, thank you for a super chat as well. He says, Ford still have a hand in Lincoln, or are they separate? No, it's still under Ford Motor Company. Lincoln would like you to think it's a completely separate thing. But I mean, like, the Navigator is built right alongside the Expedition in the factory. They share platforms, they share engines, they share many components. Now, the Lincolns are hands down the nicer vehicles, and I think now they do a better job of distinguishing themselves from the Fords better than they ever have. And I think I think in most cases, especially if you have the money to spend, I absolutely would rather have the Lincoln version of everything Ford makes a Lincoln version of. So absolutely worth the extra money. Totally love it. I actually really liked, we actually just had an Aviator last week. I'm having a Navigator next week. So you'll be seeing a couple Lincoln reviews here coming up. But again, spoiling my own videos here. The Aviator was really impressive. I really actually enjoyed it. And Lincoln does great stuff. And Kavandra, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, new technology now, BMW should bring the i8 back. I agree. And it sounds like there was a rumor, I think sometime late last year, that like they had approved, or they were in the final stages of doing a new i8 successor based on the M Vision concept, I think it was called, or something like that. It was basically, it looked like a new i8. They were like, I can't remember the percentage. It's like 80 or 90% done with it, and then they stopped it at the very tail end of the development for whatever reason. But they almost did it, and then they didn't, and I don't know why. I can't remember if there was any actual good reasons given in the article. And again, this is all kind of, again, he said, she said, so I don't know how much of it is legit, but that was what the report was claiming. And it's just a shame, because it would have been so cool to see that back. And Sean, thanks so much for giving a membership here, and happy to see that Cooper was able to get that. So now he can get that priority answering as well, though again, I'm answering most questions here tonight as well, but I may skip some of the non-member ones here towards the end if we run out of time, just to make sure all those member ones are answered. But so happy to see someone that's actually in the live stream actually get a membership. So thanks so much, Sean, and congrats to Cooper there. And Stratus, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, Matt, favorite premium audio system, non-premium. So as far as favorite premium, again, that Escalade AKG 36 speaker stereo is probably my favorite. I also really love the Audi Bang & Olufsens. Those are so good as well. The BMW and Volvo Bowers & Wilkins are also a close runner-up, but I think, to me, I just prefer the 3D effect in the Audi Bang & Olufsen systems slightly better than the way Bowers & Wilkins. The Bowers & Wilkins ones are just very clear. If you're not interested in the 3D thing, I think those are probably the best. But if you do like the 3D thing, again, I kind of went on about this in my SQ6 e-tron review, so stay tuned for that. But the 3D effect in these new Audis is like really taken it to the next level. It is phenomenal, because now they have headrest speakers like the Escalade, but in the Audi, it like it almost messes with your head, because the Audi SQ6 e-tron, the stereo is so immersive. You can crank up or down how much of it you want going through the headrest, but it's like right there to the point where it almost feels like I'm wearing like amazing headphones. It's so good. It almost it's the closest I've ever imagined it feeling to hearing a song just in my brain, like, and not like, not like hearing it or like hearing other stuff, getting in the way of it, but just like the pure audio with no interference or anything like that. It's really impressive. If you can ever experience it for yourself, try out the new Audi system. It's really, really good. As far as non-premium, I think Mazda, I mean, they're kind of doing a premium push, but I think Mazda's Bose systems are hands down my favorite. Typically in the non-premium segment, they are so well done. They're very smart with the way they're engineered. Like they don't have any speakers in the lower part of the doors where you usually see them, because they say that adds rattle under bass situations. So they put those speakers instead into the footwell, and then it's much cleaner in that area. There's more sound deadening and stuff, and a much cleaner bass. That's something they introduced with the Mazda 3 and continue to do with everything else new since then. And it really pays off, I think, especially if you listen to bass heavy music. The Mazdas still have the cleanest bass in the non-premium segment. So I think those are probably the top ones in my opinion. Great question, Straston. Thank you so much. And Linda, thank you for a super chat as well. She says, I prefer my Garmin GPS with voice commands and free updates. It's more reliable than Android Auto. What subscription are you talking about? So a lot of these cars now have a Wi-Fi connection in the car, and you have to, a lot of them, again, it comes free for a while, but you have to eventually pay, just like you pay for your data connection on your phone. You got to pay for the data connection for the car to connect itself to the satellites and the cell towers. And so that is the subscription I'm talking about there. That's kind of like if you have an Apple Watch, something like that. If you want the phone version where you can use this as an actual phone, you got to pay for the data and all that. That's what I'm saying as far as that. Obviously, Android Auto certainly has its downfalls as well, because you have just the need still to have a cell tower. So that has limits too. And yeah, if you are absolutely going off the beaten path, Garmin GPS is great. Now, actually, this is what I really loved about the Bullet. The Bullet, I selected the technology package, which had the GPS built in, so that, even if I am not in cell service and I'm, needing to get home, that navigation was still good old GPS. It's all the maps built in. I just tell it I want to go home, and it takes me back to civilization there. And that is hugely important. And that's another thing. Honestly, I hadn't really thought about that a whole lot. So that's a very good point, Linda, to bring up, that with more and more of these systems going to Google Maps, that's great. And some of them do have offline maps, but I think there's a limit to how much of that it can do offline. I haven't ever tried it offline, I don't think. A lot of them just really get crippled whenever you go offline. But that's true. If you don't have any traditional GPS in the vehicle anymore like that, and you're doing everything through the internet, what if, that goes down, or you're in an area where that's not around? I mean, we've had, some of these power outages recently around here. People have had their cell service go out for days. If your car is dependent on that, you need to get directions somewhere, and it's all internet based. That's not a good position. I mean, there's all kinds of downfalls, obviously, of being over reliant on internet connections for stuff and electricity in general for stuff. So, I mean, I think, the GPS in your car is really, again, a very good thing to still have. And that's one nice thing, the Mach-E, actually, even though it is so internet based with the infotainment, it still does have like a forward regular GPS system kind of built into it as well. If need be, you can still navigate with that if everything else fails with, CarPlay and stuff, which is really, it is a good backup to have, especially if you live in a place where you don't have a ton of cell service. And that's something, people don't really highlight enough of. So that's actually something good for me to keep in mind for future reviews when I'm talking about this stuff, because it is very important to have regular GPS. And great point, Linda. Raphael, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, I have shown my age, old as a planet. I took my driving test in my family's 1984 Lincoln Town Car. Oh, that's not so bad. B. Mitchell's got you beat. Don't feel bad at all. That must have been a challenge. That's honestly, you deserve like a 1.5 level license or something, I think, for passing your driving test in something that large. Especially, I don't know if your state requires a parallel parking test, but in PA it did. And that was nice and easy to do in the small cars I was doing it in. So I did a lot of my driver prep stuff in my mom's 2001 Beetle. But I think I took the driving test, if I remember correctly. I think it was my parents' 97 Subaru Impreza Outback Sport, which was a station wagon, I suppose, but it was really small, especially by modern standards, and very easy to parallel park still. But that's awesome, and that Lincoln must have been such a nice cruiser. Thanks for sharing, Raphael. And Hyper Shadow, thank you so much for a super chat. He says Mazda 3 and Integra GLI premium sound systems. Your opinion on them? Are they close? And how does the Fast and Furious OST sound in them? All right, great question. So yeah, I mean, I kind of already covered this a little bit, but yeah, Mazda 3 hands down is going to be the best one of the bunch there. Integra though does have the ELS stereo, or yeah, I think because I don't think that one switched over to the Bang & Olufsen there yet, but Integra is very good, especially the top versions there. So, but maybe Integra is better than the Mazda. I mean, technically Acura is premium there, but yeah, Integra is probably better. GLI is actually not a great stereo. It's the Beats audio or whatever, and sadly, I mean, Volkswagen does some things well, but I don't think they do stereos very well. I don't, which is so strange because Audi does some of the best. So it's just like Volkswagen doesn't get any of that love. But I think Volkswagen systems are consistently like some of the lowest ranked audio systems, in my opinion, in my experience, compared to the competitors, especially when we're talking about the branded upgrades. If we're talking about base stereos, probably not a whole lot of difference. But when you're talking about I'm paying for a higher trim or I'm paying for an option package to get a better stereo, I don't feel like the Beat stereos really give you any kind of noticeable standout performance. Again, if you cross shop the other, premium stereos in the segment, and Integra is very good. I believe Integra has roof mounted speakers, which really usually is a good sign of a good surround sound experience in my experience. I'd have to revisit Integra again to truly say, but either that or Mazda 3. They're both probably very close. They both would sound very, very good. Listening to the Fast and Furious OST. Thanks for the super chat there, Hyper Shadow. Jordan, thank you for another super chat as well. He says all phones collect vocal dialect, and even Duolingo collects vocal data. Why wouldn't that data apply to U.S. vehicles? I mean, maybe it does. I'm not entirely sure, how well it does that because I really don't speak any other languages fluently enough to test it. I do speak broken French, but I wouldn't blame any car system for not understanding my French. So that would be not a great test of that. But yeah, I don't know how well they are at that. I mean, that'd be a really great question for a multilingual reviewer to test, or someone who, is in other countries. Maybe, now with Google Translate on all the videos and the different, what do they call it? The dubs, the auto dubs that they have now. Maybe you can, watch a foreign review on something and see how it does with voice commands in other dialects, especially if there's a dialect that you're, after that you would like it to understand. So yeah, it's a good question. I don't have a good answer for that, but I'd like to think it'd be good. But just with how much they struggle with English, basic English, which I don't think is that terrible with the way I speak it. It doesn't give me a whole lot of faith that everything else can be well done. And Chad, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, "Tell Beth Happy Mother's Day." I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. And yeah, tomorrow we'll try and make it a special of a day as we can here for her, and I hope she has a good one. And again, hope everyone else there that is a mother or has mothers in their life there. Hope they all have a fantastic day as well. And Jordan, thank you for another super chat. He says, phone connected wirelessly. Does your text, contacts, photos, etc. feed into the car's manufacturer's database? That is supposed to be separate. And if it is, then they ask your permission, or they are supposed to ask for your permission for some of that stuff. So typically whenever you sync your phone with Bluetooth, like it'll ask you if it can download your contacts, and because usually cars like to handle that side of it on their own in case you're not using CarPlay or whatever. So like that's something they always say, like, can we get your contacts? Now, I'm pretty sure they don't use that. It's not like they're like saying, "Oh, sweet, we got all these phone numbers. Now let's sell them to telemarketers or anything." I'm pretty sure that is consumer protection laws around that stuff. I don't know, and maybe that'll be thrown out the window here, sometime soon. I don't know, but I believe the way things are, that's not something they can exploit too much. I know there are certain data components. Actually, I think it's GM was just in court over this, over driver data and them selling that to insurance companies. And they said that was legal and fine. Their legal argument, I'm butchering this, I'm sure, so don't quote me on any of this, but I believe their argument was that any data, any driving data that they collected is public data because anyone that's driving next to you would be observing the same things. And so therefore there's no expectation of privacy about how you drive. And so the car, in GM's opinion, is allowed to record every move you make and then utilize that however they want. And they think they're fully in the legal right to do that. And maybe they are, especially legally speaking. Does that leave a good taste in people's mouth, though? Probably not. And I don't remember the ruling. I don't know if the ruling has been finalized yet or any of that stuff. But that's kind of just the cliff notes there that I caught of that briefly. I got to do more research into that. I don't have a lot of time to dig deep into every interesting thing I see pop up. But so yeah, there's those types of things, and these are the battles that are going to be fought here in the next few years, as far as, again, our ever increasing fight over our own data and how it's used, and AI and all this other stuff. It's really getting crazy. I mean, this is something, even as a YouTuber, that's been popping up recently, is this idea that a lot of people are probably using our videos to train their language models and train their AI without our permission. And like Google finally, just a few months back, added an option so you can opt out of having these systems. I think automatically now everyone has opted out. You have to actually opt in for it to let for you to be giving them permission to train AI with your videos and stuff. But like, this has been something YouTubers have been talking about being like a new revenue stream of like, okay, well, if you want to train your AI to do a fake car review, like, pay me, and basically, just like I get paid for ads on here, like, pay me for the license usage of these videos for training purposes for your software. That's something in the other tech world before AI just kind of stole everything from everyone. It was stuff like you had to pay a licensing fee if you wanted to use people's stuff for your own purposes, and so that's when everyone's like, okay, well, like, I'd be cool with this if you paid me, and I probably would be too, honestly. But like, they didn't want to do that, obviously, because they were just out to make the most amount of money possible in the bro tech sphere. And so they're just trying to get everything for free. But hopefully that's something someday we can have a little more control over it, and at least monetize it if we're able to. Would be at least a better way to cushion that blow. But yeah, it's crazy stuff. And Hyper Shadow, thank you so much for a super chat. It says, see you guys next week. I'll tell you what night. I don't know if I'm misreading that or what, but I'll tell you what, maybe that's what you're saying there. Took me a second. Anyway, good night to you. And yeah, I got about another 15 minutes. Yeah, sorry, I just didn't get that for a second. I apologize. But yeah, have a great night and a great rest of your weekend, Hyper Shadow. Thanks so much for stopping by, and thank you for all the super chats. And yeah, we got another 14 minutes here. We are probably pretty far behind at this point. I've been loving the more instant feedback here, though, and the instant kind of comments with the super chat. So that's been great. But I do want to get into some of the other member questions here as well, and try and hit some of those here. So we answer all those. I am going to skip non-member questions, though, just for the rest of the stream here, so we don't run out of time for the members here. Because yeah, we are definitely very far behind here. I'm not mad about it, but I just want to make sure that everyone's questions get answered here. So Chad's asking, any new info on Slate? Nothing new that I've seen, aside from the fact that I think they've confirmed their production facility is now, I believe it's going to be in Illinois, I think it was, or Indiana, one or the other. But they kind of confirmed where it's going to be, like kind of repurposed old warehouse they're going to be using. And so that's great. And yeah, still wishing them all the best. Raphael says, I think I've proven that you can have a Camry and think you're winning at life. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you definitely did, Raphael. You picked a great one with the TRD version, and Camrys are great. It's just, again, that same issue we talked about earlier with the Model 3, as far as, them just being so common, sometimes I think lessens the appeal for some people. But TRDs are definitely, I think, a little bit of a different beast and a lot more appealing for sure. And I see Danny also says, thanks for stopping by, Danny. Happy to see you here. He says that their Bolt was in the shop. They got a brand new 25 Blazer EV LT all-wheel drive, and rare spot was a Ram Eco Diesel. That is a rare spot. And Danny also says the Bolt had to have its main big battery restarted because it was having computer issues and software updates and open recalls. So we had the Blazer from Monday to Friday. Nice. Well, hope you enjoyed it. And let me see. Harsh says, will the next generation standard Corolla sedan be a little more sporty than the current gen Corolla? I think Tesla Model 3s have taken over the commuter role, so the Corolla would probably get a little sportier. Well, they don't want to give up market share, so I think they're going to make sure that Corolla still is, being the world car that it is. And actually, I had the real privilege of having dinner. I was actually able to sit next to the lead engineer for the Corolla for this, generation that, came out. It was on the drive for the sedan version. This was back in 2019. And I was able to talk to him, about the challenges of engineering a car for the world. I can't remember how many millions of Corollas they sell every year worldwide, but he's like, the challenge of, this isn't a US car. This is a car that literally, like, basically every country in the world almost has for sale. How do that's insanely hard to engineer. So how do you make it everything that everyone wants it to be? Obviously, you have variants, and GR is a great option for, again, those people who want the sporty version. And I think that's great. They can lean on that. And obviously, there's minor little variations they can do for various markets. But like at the end of the day, like the core car has to be the same for everybody in the world and be this hugely popular thing. And also like a very high pressure job too, because like you cannot screw that up. It's very important. And so it was, again, an incredible privilege. These are why, I kind of dabble about, do I go on the press trips? Do I not? But stuff like that, getting to talk to the person that has to like make the decisions on like, how do you engineer a world car like that is a enormous job that I'm sure he's not getting paid enough for. It just like, it's crazy. So, to answer your question, I think it's one of those cars. It has to be evolutionary because what has worked and what will continue to work, and so it's very hard to really break out of the mold. So I think going a little sportier, they did that with this past generation. I think having the SEs and the LEs be a separate thing and having separate styling to really, really kind of cater to those two markets of maybe the younger, sportier demographic that wants that sportier vibe for their Corolla and a more youthful kind of vibe to it, and then you want the boring librarian kind of driver, whatever stereotype you want to pick, who, just needs a cheap, good, reliable car, and they know Corolla will run forever. And, they don't need that sporty stuff. And that would actually be a turnoff for them. This is why you have the regular LEs and XLEs for the buyer. So I think they did a really good job. I think, they've seen that has probably worked pretty well. And since that's a relatively new thing, again, it's only been around with that two flavor kind of a design for, I guess at this point we're at 7 years, which again, for the lifespan of the Corolla is a short amount of time. I think for the next generation, you will probably see it be evolutionary. And I think you will probably actually see it be again on a very similar platform, which in my opinion is good news. Because if it follows the same path as Camry, where it's kind of a lot of the same car underneath, that's good because then that means that it's very easy to bolt in the same GR Corolla powertrain straight into the new one and not have to worry about packaging issues and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not anticipating a giant change, honestly, for a next generation Corolla. And I think it'll be probably very similar to what you saw with jump from prior gen Camry to the new one here. Different styling, but a lot of the core points are the same. Roof structure might be the same. Those types of things, I think, is probably what you're going to see. I don't know. I know nothing about the new Corolla. I don't know when it's coming or what. I'm actually kind of surprised. I thought maybe it'd be 2026, but then we just saw this new FX edition I talked about in the weekly update for 2026. So it sounds like maybe it's going to be a 2027 car or later. Who knows? They might try and go even 10 years, which would put them right around 29 possibly. So we might still have a few more years for a Corolla. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's I think still a great little car. And let me see. Harsh also said, I just got a new computer yesterday. It's a Lenovo V15 with the AMD Ryzen 7 and 1 terabyte storage, a good balance between a school and work laptop and a gaming laptop. Nice. Well, hope you're enjoying it. And yeah, I'm glad you're able to get a new one there. That's great. Hopefully the prices haven't risen on those too much yet. Linda says, somehow I feel it will work out. Good time to sell your used car if you have a spare. Yeah, well, as far as used stuff, I think we haven't seen even the beginning of the peak of used car sales just yet. I mean, they're going to go up in value big time. I think again, just like we saw with COVID, I know this is talking about a conversation we were having probably an hour ago at this point, but like we saw with COVID, it's going to be the same kind of thing where used car prices are really going to go up again, along with those new cars. And even, I mean, because we're going to see some bare shelves here this summer, I think it'll be I'm even like planning, like we have a bunch of old baby stuff up in the attic and all that. Like I'm like holding that stuff because I don't think we're going to need it anymore, so like I'm holding that stuff for whenever, these shelves are bare and everyone's going to the secondhand stores because they can't get new stuff, and then we'll be able to dump all of our stuff for a premium, hopefully. So I'm even like, planning that kind of stuff out. I think secondhand stuff's going to go way up in value here this summer, especially. And so that's something I'm hoping to capitalize on, at least in that little way. But if you have a used car to sell, don't sell it yet, because I don't think we've seen, really hardly any price spikes yet. That will happen, and it's going to be, definitely going to be profitable for anyone that's looking to sell stuff. So I'd hold on to that, until we really start to see that pain start to, pick up, and then you'll get a nice profit there if you have something to sell. Let me see. Truck and Car Guy says, can confirm that Wagoneers and even Cherokees have been problematic, especially with the hybrid system at my work, as far as, the Stellantis platform there. Yeah, I've heard that as well, which is unfortunate. Let me see. So I see some other people were checking in here earlier and saying hi. Thanks for stopping by, everyone. Goth Rocker says, to be fair, look it up. Tesla and Rivian are the most made in America brands. Ford has a lot of Mexican and Chinese built vehicles and parts, and GM and Dodge also has lots of Chinese and Mexican vehicles. Well, as far as Chinese manufactured stuff, I believe the only thing built from Ford is, again, Nautilus, and I think for GM is Envision, are the only ones built in China. Now Chinese parts, there's plenty of that for sure. But Tesla and Rivian are some of the highest American-made brands. Ford is very high up there, though. And again, I was a witness to that here this week, going through the Kentucky truck plant and seeing all the stuff they build right there in Kentucky. Cam says, hi, everyone. I know haven't been able to join recently, but Sunday nights are the worst time for me. Looking forward to being back consistently in a couple of weeks. All good. I totally can understand the busyness and all that too. I've been busier this past month than I honestly think I've ever been in my life. And that's not an exaggeration. It's been crazy. So I totally understand, Cam, and thanks so much for stopping by. I see the Decepticons also here as well. Raphael says, electric cars have never been political for me. I've enjoyed driving them, but sound is very important to me. It's a big loss for now. Yeah, I totally understand that. And I wish that people were able to just judge them on their merits. And they have certain pros and certain cons. And I wish it could be that simple. It's just that's unfortunately been so politicized. This is something I talk about, especially whenever it was more of an issue a couple of years ago. Talked with all my reviewer friends about how, it really sucks that, we can't just evaluate these vehicles like regular vehicles. There's all this baggage that goes along with them and all this, assumption and connotations and this, that, and the other, and misinformation and stupid crap you have to deal with in the comments and everything. It's unfortunate. You can't just, treat it like a regular product review and leave it at that, let me see. I see B. Mitchell also said he went to the sandwich place I talked about earlier in Pittsburgh when I was working on an installation in 2011. Also can recommend the Church Brew Pub in a former church near the old Iron City Brewery. Yeah, that's always good too. I've been there in the past. There's some some funny stuff like that we have in Pittsburgh with repurposed churches and firehouses and all that kind of stuff. And Chad says, really makes you appreciate all that goes into making a new vehicle. Definitely. Yeah, with everything, I think most people had no clue how complex all these supply chains were and how much of their car, wasn't American made and all that stuff, even though it's got a American flag sticker on it or whatever. Like it's, very much an international product. Harsha says, do you think electric bicycles and motorcycles would be easier to accept as electric vehicles? Except for Harley riders, I don't think bike people are as toxic towards EVs as car people. Yeah, I think so. I think, a lot of people are excited about, the electrification of the bikes and the motorcycles. And I think that has a lot of promise too. And a lot of, potential in the future, especially again as batteries get lighter and get more potent. It's going to be really so great. And so yeah, I think that's an area a lot of people are excited to embrace. And Gotham Marker says Permane Brothers was good but pricey. They left this area of PA. Bummer. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, pricing. I mean, I don't know about what it's like near you, but I mean, these days for me, it's about like everything else is pretty expensive unless you're getting fast food, and even that's not that cheap anymore. But just another one of the things here we have in these times we're living in. Vishal says, I forgot my cool spot this week was a red SL55 AMG convertible. What a classy car that is. Yeah, that is a very classy car. Very cool. Nice spot. And see, Truck and Car Guy said he also saw an AMG GT earlier today. Nice. I see Sean's asking, what do I think of American reviewers reviewing Chinese cars? I was wondering when people would ask about that, because that's something that I have chosen not to do and many others have. And so I'll be brief with this one because I know we're about out of time here and I want to hit the other member questions here. But I do want to address that because that's something I've been wondering if people were going to be wondering about with me. I've chosen to not do the Chinese things. I've gotten those offers to review all the Chinese stuff. That's there's that one thing in California that has a bunch of them. To me, I guess it's everyone who does it, it's a little bit of an awe factor. And again, maybe a lot of these people are appealing to enthusiast viewers who are not car shoppers, who are just people who say, "Ooh, this is cool. Let's see what else is available elsewhere in the world." But for me, I'm trying to do car buying advice for consumers, primarily in America and Canada. And the other English speaking places, which most of them don't get the Chinese EVs. And so to me, it's just like it's a waste of time for me to review a car that no one can buy here. And I can't even do the review for Chinese viewers because they can't access YouTube. So it's like a lose-lose as far as the appeal factor. Obviously, some of these people are getting huge views though on these videos. So clearly for their audiences that works. Maybe it would work for mine if I tried it. I also still have some reservations about supporting Chinese vehicles myself and promoting them, because there's still some things that, I feel are not ideal about the way they're produced, about the, way they came about and stuff. And so, I guess this wades into just my feelings on, the Chinese government and stuff in general. But just not something I personally think from a content standpoint would be smart for me. And also just something that I also have a few holdups on as well, just personally. So that's why no Chinese reviews from me. Maybe someday. And again, if some of these companies bring stuff to America that people can actually buy, then I will probably, review them then. But for now, just not something I'm honestly interested in. And it's like I have no shortage of cars to review. And everyone else, again, if they get good views on them, that's great. But for me, if I'm going to be doing off the wall stuff or just doing stuff for fun or for an awe factor, I'm going to go and hunt down a really clean 350Z to review, or I'm going to go and hunt down something else that I actually want to drive. I don't want to drive. I mean, these Chinese EVs will be kind of a fun experiment, but like I want to go back and drive like cool stuff that I had fun reviewing 10 years ago. That's what I'm going to hunt down and like search for if I'm giving up on like consumer advice and just driving stuff for fun. I'm not going to pick Chinese EVs to just play around with them. I'm going to pick, the greatest hits of the past 2 decades and, all my favorite stuff that's been made and just do that if I'm just selfishly, reviewing cars that aren't consumer advice. So that's kind of my stance on that whole thing. But yeah, more power to all my colleagues that have done it and, are getting great views on it. I'm very happy for them. Just not something I'm personally excited about doing. And Darnell says, since it's Mother's Day, what's the best mom car in 2025? Okay, so that's what Linda was responding to earlier. It all comes down to what that mom needs. Every mom needs different things and, has different situations in life that, so whatever car makes their lives as easy as possible because they have so much on their plate. I think that's, the right car for them. And that's what I'm helping them to find. I'm really actually kind of proud, I think, compared to other male presenter car review channels. I think I have a pretty high percentage of female viewers, which I'm really actually proud of, because to me it hopefully means that my appeal is beyond just car guys and stuff, but it's actually hopefully really helpful videos for everyone and anyone. So yeah, I really, that's, again, the whole point of the channel is to try and help them find exactly what will fit their life the best and make things easier for them. Chaz is probably a Florida thing, but in Pensacola there's car boats. Here in Milton they're a wave runner motorcycle that people mod themselves. Wow, I didn't know that was a thing. That's pretty wild. I've heard of the amphibicar and stuff like that, but never wave runners turned into motorcycles. That's pretty wild. I'd love to see one of those. I'll have to Google that. Harsha says a minivan. And Fook says, I subscribe for the rants and the straightforward opinions. I'm glad you appreciate it. I just don't want to get on people's nerves, because I know I probably can get kind of annoying eventually. So hopefully, again, I'm not driving too many people away, but I'm glad you appreciated Fook, and hope others do as well. It's so funny because I look back at like some of the old criticisms. Sometimes I'm guilty of Googling myself, which is a very bad thing to do for your self-esteem, especially if you're in the public eye. But that was a common complaint back in the day, was like, oh, he's so positive about everything. Like, he never has a negative opinion. And like, these people definitely have not watched a video in the past few years, because I feel like I'm so much more ranty, so much more like gloves off, like not pulling any punches. I mean, I was always honest, but I think I really have been outspoken about the things that piss me off in cars more than I ever have. And I kind of wonder, if any of these people ever revisited the channel, because I feel like they would probably actually not have that opinion anymore. But yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it, Fook. And Cam says, I've been running a lot recently, 27 miles this week. Good for you. That's awesome. And there is this singular white Toyota Venza that is out to get me. If y'all never hear from me again, it was him. All right. Well, it's been documented here online for all of time. If anything ever happens to Cam Jam and a Venza is involved, we know what happens. So I appreciate the heads up, Cam, and kudos on running. That's awesome. I'm trying to get out and walk some more myself and get a little healthier as well. But so yeah, that's so awesome. Beth's actually really into running as well. Not that much, but that's really impressive. So yeah, kudos to you. Let me see. Goth Rocker says, I buy CDs. CDs have better sound quality than streaming. Yep, definitely. And what I do is take all my music and use the highest bit rate possible, copy music from CD onto a USB thumb drive. USB music is better than streaming. I agree. That's a great workaround for sure. And yeah, it's I mean, I've started to see, I think not all vehicles have a USB audio option now. A lot of them are just charging ports at this point. But for those that still do enable, music through USB, that's definitely a great way to go. And Cam says, Matt, what would you pick, or anyone else with insight, a TLX V6 all-wheel drive A-Spec or an ES350 F-Sport? I'm assuming we're talking new, because I don't particularly need all-wheel drive being in Southern Maryland, but would appreciate it putting down the power. Okay. So personally, now I don't know if I just had a weird ES, but the ES I had as a press vehicle, this was probably 5 years ago now, did not handle as well as I expected it to, especially in the wet. So, and honestly, I like TLX better. It's sportier. It's better steering, better stereo, better. I don't know. I really just love TLX. The V6 version, I guess, that we're talking about prior gen there, isn't quite as good as the newest gen, in my opinion, but is still really, nice and tight, really well done. ES, though, is very good too. ES will run forever, as will probably the TLX, honestly. So both are good choices. Again, I'd have to know exactly what model years you're talking about to really drill down a whole lot, but probably not much help. Both are great. You can probably get a better deal on the TLX too, and get like a newer vehicle for the same money as the Lexus, which probably holds its value a little bit better. So if that's also in play here, I'd probably say go for the newer, nicer one. If the Acura is that, then I think that I could probably sway you to the Acura. But hopefully it helps you a little bit there. Yeah, and I see Clamp says Matt equals GOAT. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for for stopping by and for the support. I really appreciate that. And Growth Rocker says the Japanese really plan things out. Many Japanese vehicles are made here in the USA. Yeah, and the Nissan Kicks is made in Mexico. They're working on moving it to the US. Yeah, and again, this allocation we're going to be seeing of everyone kind of tweaking everything. And Harsha says, which would you get, a new cheap luxury car or a top spec non-premium or semi-premium car? It depends on the segment. I think there's some segments where, like, for example, you can't get all-wheel drive easily. And so, like some of those segments, if you want all-wheel drive, you're probably better off going up to a luxury brand, especially the luxury sports sedans all offer that versus some of the mainstream competitors in the sedan segment don't. So, in those kinds of cases, for example, we're talking about Kia, again, not offering all-wheel drive. The Sonata has it, but like if you want to have all-wheel drive, you go up to the Genesis, and then you have all-wheel drive on all those, so there's that type of thing. There's other cases, though, where I think stuff's nice enough where, like, you don't need to go up. Like, for example, the question about, Cam asking about the TLX or the ES, depends. I don't know, again, the pricing of all this stuff, but like part of me would be like, TLX is great, but I'd be happy with an Accord 2.0T, that's newer for the same money. Or if we're talking, and again, I don't know what the price tag we're talking about is, you might even get a new Accord. And I'd rather have something with all the newest safety, all the newest tech, and newest refinement and all that, and get something newer. If it's non-premium, it's still so impressive and still has so many of those features that used to be luxury that, like, for me, I've never been someone who buys for a badge or anything like that. I don't think Cam is either, but just, there's a lot of times, again, depending on exactly what kind of money you're dealing with and what you're looking for, where I think a lot of times it's better just to go for a non-premium one, because again, some of them, many of them are just so nice these days. And I see Trent Car Guy says, yeah, Sentra is quite nice. I just don't like that the Sentra and the Versa look like a smaller Ultima. Yeah, that's true. And also I see, Raphael says, thanks so much for another stream here. I see Linda also has gifted 5 memberships. Thank you so much for that, Linda. I appreciate that generosity right here towards the end. She's trying to help out Danny, but just, unfortunately, it seems like the YouTube algorithm just does not like Danny there as far as gifting memberships. But thank you so much, Linda, for the generosity. And also I see Jordan, thank you for another super chat as well. He says, current administration, should all companies go hybrid? I think it depends on the company and depends on, what they currently have. Because again, you can't engineer a car for a president or an administration. It's just, you don't have enough time. So really it comes down to, what do you have at the ready right now that, again, obviously no one has to worry about fuel economy for the next 4 years. So it's what can be the best profit vehicle for us for the next 4 years, but that also doesn't put us behind in case we have an administration change that reinstates the Biden EV goals, in 2029, then a lot of companies could end up behind and then have not a whole lot to offer if they put all their EV development on the back burner. So this is something other car companies have talked about. Like Rivian CEO again said, like, anyone who kind of does that and kind of ignores EVs for the next 4 years is going to be at a disadvantage in the 2030s. And, we'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll have a completely obliterated EPA for the rest of time, or maybe things will swing back the other way like they often do. And so, it's a gamble. And this is why, again, I'm not envious of anyone making these decisions at car companies. But, I think it really comes down to the car company and what they do best. I think like Dodge, for example, it sounds like they're scrambling to get as many V8s back online as they can and churn them out in as many things as possible. Because for them, they got the STLA platform in Europe, and they know the European, brands are going to be doing their thing, and they can always have that as a backup if they need to pull that stuff into the States at some point. And they have, some of the EVs here that they're doing alongside the gas. But I think they're like, hey, look, we got these V8s everyone wants anyway. Let's cash in on this for the next 4 years. And if it goes away in 2029, who cares? Cash in for now, make them all collectible, special editions or whatever you want to do. And you bring the V8s back, you're everyone's savior and everyone's happy and excited that's a Mopar fan. And, you get some, goodwill from buyers again. And then, again, if they got to face the music in 2029, then so be it. You say, oh, here we go, another final edition, another last call, whatever. And then, you ride off into the sunset again, and everyone, is sad about it. And then they go back to the EV thing that they were already planning, before this change. So, And that's just one example. Every car company is going to play things differently based on their strengths and what they have at the ready right now. But I think you're going to see again that balancing act and the balancing act of how many of these things can you actually build given the factories you have and the other things you need to prioritize to keep your bottom line up and all that. So it's a whole thing. Very complicated decision making process there. But going hybrid for everybody, I don't think that's a one size fits all kind of thing. I think there's for some that might be the answer. For others, I think it might not. And Chad, thank you so much for another super chat. He says Matt is WRX fan forever. Hashtag never forget. Yep. I am will forever be WRX fan and will always embrace that, even if I am not the biggest WRX fan anymore. And let me see here. So I don't want to ignore any of the other member questions. So we are over time here, but I'm going to quickly try and do the last few member questions here, and then we will head on out here. So Harsh says, how do you rate the infotainment systems for all the major manufacturers? Tesla has a pretty good system for what it is. Yeah, if we're putting the CarPlay thing aside, I think Tesla's are really one of the quickest and snappiest ones. I think this really could be like a whole long video as far as ranking all the car infotainment systems. So that's kind of hard for me to say off the top of my head. But I'd say Subaru is pretty easily probably the last place winner. Them and honestly, Volvo started to do newer stuff, but the Volvo system is also equally bad. Honestly, worse in some cases. I'd say Volvo and Subaru, are currently like the worst. Now, Subaru also, again, new Outback's going to have, a new infotainment system and stuff too. So they're both getting better. But if we're talking, 2024, 2025 model year vehicles, Volvo and Subaru are probably the worst in my mind. And everything else is mostly pretty good with a few exceptions. And, nothing really super outstanding, I'd say. Again, some are certainly better than others. Some of the German ones are still a little overly complicated for their own good. But I think, I really love the simple ones, like Toyota, just having like literally like everything going straight to smartphone integration and then a few other basic functions. And that's pretty much it. Ford's doing that now with their new digital experience thing as well, where it's the same kind of thing where priority given to your phone. Otherwise, a few basic things all nicely arranged and, pretty easily done there. So I think those are the simpler, the better is what I found recently is really what I'm relieved to see is like a lot of companies just simple, like 4 or 5 icons, a few basic things, having a menu page that has a bunch of other stuff if you want to dig in, but otherwise keeping it nice and simple on the surface, I think is easily the way to do it. And let me see here. Raphael says, I have my name on a barrel. I was one of the original Maker's Marks ambassadors when they gave us cards to give out at bars. Wow, that is awesome. That's so cool. Man, I'd love to hear more about that story someday, Raphael. I'd love to share a bourbon with you someday. That'd be really cool to hear about. That's awesome. That's got to be fun. And let me see. So Harsha says, Tipsy Matt would roast manufacturers in ways we've never seen before. Probably be a little bit of that. Probably a little bit of roasting the YouTube car world as well. and just coming for blood there a little bit. But again, I won't go there. And Harsha says, Yugo or Mitsubishi Mirage? Oh, definitely Mirage. Mirage is actually a solid little car. And a TFI hopefully will come out to agree. But yeah, no, Yugo is definitely worse. Linda says you'd have to have a 10-second delay so Beth could censor you. Right. Yeah. I'd have to have her standing by here so that I could take a sip and then have her immediately cover my mouth if I'm going on some stupid tangent. And Truck and Car Guy says still better than a Tesla. Key is literally a credit card, right? Yeah, I mean, they also have the phone thing, which I think probably is better. Yeah, I think Tesla does the key card thing better than most others that I've seen. But yeah, still just it's not a perfect software or perfect application there. And yeah, I know there's so many other questions here that I wasn't able to get to tonight. Definitely, stop by next week, or you can always send me a message here for all these non-member questions as well. I'm not able to get to here. And Sean says, I was checking in on my lunch break. Hope everyone has a great night. I appreciate that, Sean. Thanks so much again for stopping by. And let me see. Okay, Basis says Samsung has just recently acquired Bowers and Wilkins and really hope they don't screw up the quality. Oh, I hadn't heard that. Wow. Yeah, that I'm worried about that now too. I had that's wow, that's crazy. They must have thrown so much money at them. That's nuts. All right, well, we will see how Bowers and Wilkins goes from here. That's thanks for giving the heads up on that. Raphael says the only points I lost were driving one-handed because I learned on a 70 Mustang with a manual. Nice, as far as the driving test earlier. That's pretty good. I'm glad. Hopefully, you still passed. And I see TFI agrees about the Beats and Fender audio on the Volkswagens. If hot dog water was a sound system, that's a great way to put it. I mean, yeah, just it's not super clear. Bass isn't very good, surprisingly, for a system called Beats. And yeah, the Volkswagen one's just not good. I don't know why. Raphael says Matt just confirmed the next stream will be in French. I could try, but it would not do justice to any of my actual French-speaking viewers out there, so I won't even attempt. But let me see, and I see Danny's saying, "Oh, his question got skipped." Well, I did catch the one there, but. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything else that I missed, but hopefully I hit the one earlier, Danny. But if there's any others I missed, definitely if there's any questions you ever have, again, please feel free to send me a message. All the contact info in the description there. Always happy to answer any questions. And let me see. TFI says I spotted 2 Saabs this week, an NG 9.3 and a 9.5 Sport Combi. Fun fact: the official Saab parts warehouse is near Allentown, PA. That's cool. That's awesome. Good to know. And that's great spots too. And let me see. Linda says she learned to drive on a Plymouth Belvedere with a 3 on the tree manual. Man, I feel like no one knows how to drive those anymore. I know how to drive one. I'm very proud of that. And I did that in my Ford Ranchero, 1957 Ford Ranchero review that I did a long time ago. But that's awesome you learned on that. That's so cool. And yeah, 3 on the tree is so great. And TFI says Ford also had an Indian built car, the EcoSport. That's true. Yeah. And Growth Rocker says Saturday is a better night for this stream for me. Sunday is very busy preparing for the next work week. Interesting. Well, maybe I will. Yeah. I mean, I'm usually pretty impartial as far as whether it would be Saturday or Sunday. If Saturdays work better for others as well. I mean, again, viewership has been a little lower tonight, but it's probably also because of just the switch up. But yeah, I might try another Saturday one in the future here and see how it works for people. Because yeah, I'm all for whatever can help grow these. Because they're not really growing. So if there's something that helps people watch, with a different night, even a weeknight, it could be something that could work for sure. I'm open to whatever. And thanks for letting me know that, Goth Rocker. And Kibble Dog, thanks for stopping by right here at the end. And Goth Rocker says, saw last gen Acura NSX today. I know people hated them, but I think they are a neat Japanese all-wheel drive supercar. They were made in Ohio. They were ahead of their time in a way. I agree. They were totally ahead of their time. E-Ray has kind of copied the formula all these years later. And he says, yeah, the owner loves it. And yeah, I love the new gen NSX. I literally titled my video "The Supercar from the Future," and yeah, was very fortunate. I got to spend a week with one of those, and man, what a car! Kibble Dog says saw an RS6 GT the other day. Thing is crazy expensive. Wow, that's rare. Man, I didn't know. There's very few coming to the States. I don't know if you're in the States, but I feel like they're coming. There's like maybe less than 50 or something. I don't know. They're really rare. That's awesome. And TFI says, I just picked up a road bike. That's awesome. I'm trying to unbig my back so I can fit into a one size too small flannel shirt I got for Secret Santa 10 years ago. Nice. Well, best of luck with that goal. I also don't fit into some of my older shirts anymore, and I need to remedy that situation someday. Maybe I never will. We'll see, but I'll try my best. And best of luck to you as well. And Goth Marker says, update my fleet is doing well. Took the Lincoln Continental out for a nice highway ride today. Still love the look ride and was so well done. No squeaks or rattles. Great sound system as well. I love the Continental as well. I have an appreciation for it as well. And so glad you're still enjoying it. And Linda says her daughter ran a half marathon, just ran a half marathon. That's awesome. Very impressive. Yeah, I would be on the floor if I tried to do something like that. I did run track in middle school, but it was not something I decided to keep up. But I have immense respect for anyone who does. And TFI says, if anyone's a cycling freak, it's a Cannondale CAD 8 with a Shimano, a Tiagra Group set, and crank. Now I understand how non-car people feel whenever I start rattling off car stuff, because that all is just complete gibberish to me. But that's awesome, and hope you enjoy it to the fullest there. And all right, so let me see. So TFI is excited about the Mirage there. And so yeah, I think we have it here caught up now. So yeah, this is we're well over time here, but Linda says dad bod Matt. I am absolutely in my dad bod era, that is for sure. Again, I'm not mad about it, honestly. I think in some ways I actually kind of I like not being I think I've kind of had a little bit of a glow up personally in some ways. Obviously, I need to make sure I stay in shape as well. But I'm not mad about the dad bod. But anyway, I appreciate all the love and all the hearts, everyone. And thanks so much for a great stream tonight. I see Goth Rocker. Last comment here says the Fender audio system in my brother's Nissan Titan is really good. I'm glad that one's good. Yeah, I don't remember it being a standout one, but it's a long time since I've been in a Titan, but I'm glad he's enjoying it there. And so lots of other great questions here. Apologies, I just can't get to everything tonight here, but definitely stop by next week as well, especially anyone who gets in early. Sometimes there's not a ton of stuff early on there, so definitely try and come to the next live stream if you can, or again send me a message. Always happy to help anyone with any questions they have here. But yeah, happy Mother's Day once again to all the moms out there. Thanks, Trucking Car Guy, for saying that as well. And have a great rest of your weekend, everyone. Thanks so much again for stopping by. Thanks for all the generous gifting and the super chats tonight. I really appreciate that support more than you know. It really, really does help. YouTube's been kind of rough the past couple of months here, so I really appreciate the support, and those who are members especially. Thank you all so much, and have a great rest of your weekend, and stay tuned for some more good stuff here next week. Take care.